The boy woke up on the ground and tried to remember what had happened before. He remembered playing a video game in his room. Looking around, he realized that he was in an unknown forest area. Sitting under a tree, he wondered about his location. The caption indicated that his name was Suzumiya Kaede and that he was 21 years old. After graduating from college, the guy devoted his time entirely to an online game called Mazard Online. This MMORPG caused a stir among players, forcing them to spend long hours in it. He played for 3 nights in a row, causing his headaches to become more and more severe. Despite being tired, he continued to wait for a rare item to drop, which usually appeared in 2 hours, but this time it did not appear even after 10. At some point, his body began to feel unusually light, as if he was losing touch with reality. The boy came to in an open area of forest that was unfamiliar to him. He noted that he was still wearing his everyday clothes. At the same time, his body felt unusually light, as if he had just woken up from a deep sleep. Looking around, he couldn't figure out where he was or how he had gotten there. The unfamiliar surroundings left him feeling confused. The young man tried to calm down, deciding that everything that was happening was just a dream. He assumed that he couldn't stand 4 nights without sleep and simply fell asleep. Trying not to worry, he continued walking forward through the forest. Along the way, he thought that he would have to apologize to the members of his Go party. Not far from him, the guy noticed a large creature with 6 legs, outwardly resembling a dog, he noted. It was next to the corpse of another animal, feeding on it. The creature noticed him and let out a threatening growl. Kaede froze in place, realizing the possible danger. The 6-legged creatures began to approach him with a furious growl. He remained motionless, as if assessing the situation. Inwardly, he noted that even in his sleep, his thinking remained that of a gamer. The young man thought about how strange it was to perceive what was happening through the prism of game concepts. He tried to compare what was happening with a status anomaly in real life, before Kaede's eyes. He was surprised to see parameters similar to a character's status in an RPG on the screen. The hero realized that the system had responded to his words. The panel displayed his name, level, stats, and skills. He froze, trying to understand why this was happening in reality. The hero continued to look at the status bar, paying attention to the magical energy indicator. He noticed that his MP reserve was 10-12 units, which seemed too high for a first level. Inwardly, he wondered about the average MP values in this world. The description stated that magical energy recovered by 10% every minute. This discovery only strengthened his suspicions about the unusual situation. While studying the parameters, the young man found that the average MP value of a normal person in this world was only 10 units. Compared to this, his own value seemed abnormally high. Among the skills, he noticed the term alien from another world, which puzzled him. Also on the list of skills were talents for magic, martial arts, and mastery of all attributes. Despite all this, he decided not to attach any importance to what was happening, considering it to be just a dream. Kaede learned that the alien from another world skill affected many parameters, including the speed of acquiring skills and the aptitude for magic. The system explained that the character's strength depended on his importance in the previous world. Despite the logical explanation, what was happening was starting to seem too real. He touched the tree, amazed at its naturalness. Inwardly, he kept repeating that this was all just a dream, although he was beginning to doubt it. Kaede noticed the 6-legged wolves approaching him again. They were coming out of the forest, slowly closing the distance between themselves and the boy. One of the animals growled menacingly, not looking away. The boy recognized them as creatures he had seen before. He remained calm, but the situation was clearly becoming tense. Realizing that the situation was becoming dangerous, Kaede decided to run away immediately. Even though he thought that everything was a dream, the fear felt very real. As he ran, he was surprised to notice that his speed was much faster than usual. He wondered if this could be due to his high rank as an alien from another world. The new level of physical agility surprised him and made him think about his own capabilities. Kaede realized with horror that the 6-legged dogs chasing him were moving as fast as he was. He tried to run away, but he couldn't keep up. The boy was surprised by the unusual appearance of these creatures, calling them green dogs. Loud growls were heard from all sides, creating a sense of impending danger. He realized that running away did not give any advantages, and he needed to find another way out. Kaede managed to climb the tree, hiding from the wolves pursuing him. One of the dogs stopped at the trunk and continued to growl menacingly from below. The boy noticed that his ability to jump had also increased significantly. He noted with relief that, thanks to this, he was able to escape the inevitable attack. Sitting on a branch, he silently observed the situation and thought about his next move. Sitting in the tree, Kaede realized that he couldn't stay there for too long, as it would soon be dark. He began to worry about getting out of the forest as soon as possible. The hero called up the status menu again, hoping to find some useful skills in the list. He wondered if he had any skills that would help in this situation. His eyes showed that he was determined to find a way out. Kaede noticed an ability called information analysis in his skill list. According to the description, it allows one to evaluate objects or beings in one's field of vision. He assumed that it was thanks to this ability that he was able to view various data earlier. The hero noted that it was most likely a high-level skill. He continued to ponder how to apply it in the current situation. Kaede decided to test whether he could use the analysis skill from a distance. He focused on the nearest wolf and activated the ability. Information about a creature called Green Wolf appeared in front of him. The creature had rank F, 35 health, 0 magic, and high strength and agility. The hero carefully studied the parameters, hoping to use the obtained data to his advantage. Kaede confirmed that it was indeed a wolf in front of him and wondered about its strength. Despite the creature's low rank, its strength was 32, making direct combat dangerous. The hero recalled his abilities, including a magic talent that accelerated the learning of spells and increased their power. He also noted the presence of a combat talent, but admitted that he did not yet know how to use magic and did not have a weapon. Then he decided to check the availability of items and opened the equipment tab. Opening the tab with items, Kaede was surprised to notice that something seemed to materialize from the panel. He felt that a physical object could actually appear in front of him. A list of cells was displayed on the screen, but not a single item was activated yet. The guy peered at the interface in surprise, trying to understand how this system worked. Everything that was happening caused him a mixture of distrust and cautious interest. Kaede realized that he was looking at an inventory interface and was glad that he actually had an item panel. He noticed that the maximum capacity was 1012, which matched his magic points. Since the slots were empty, he deduced that he did not have any items on him. He assumed that there might be hidden commands in the system that he had not yet discovered. Sitting in the tree, he continued to analyze the possibilities of the new world. Kaede decided to try using magic, assuming that the spell needed to be called out to activate it. He shouted words out loud that imitated the magic formula. However, no effects followed, and he admitted his failure with disappointment. Despite the high magical parameters, the flames never appeared in his hands. The guy noted that it would be convenient if everything worked that easily. Suddenly, a flame flared up before Kaede's eyes, causing him to jump back in surprise. He realized with surprise that an actual fire sphere had appeared before him. The hero began to wonder if it was really a fireball spell. He came to the conclusion that perhaps activating magic did not require words, but a vivid mental image. This discovery gave him a new understanding of the mechanics of magic in this world. Kaede decided not to waste time and immediately try the magic again. He concentrated, imagining a fireball bursting out of his hands, this time more powerful. The wolves became wary, noticing his actions. The hero felt a surge of energy and even joy, which he had not experienced for a long time. He realized that the situation, despite the danger, was causing him real excitement. Kaede concentrated and directed the mentally created fireball towards one of the green wolves. The spell worked, and the fiery projectile burst out of his hand, rushing towards the target. The boy watched the result in amazement, not believing his eyes. He realized with delight that magic really obeyed his imagination. This success became for him the first confirmation of the reality of the new experience. The fireball hit one of the wolves at high speed, causing a powerful explosion of flame. The creatures did not have time to react. finding themselves in the epicenter of the attack. The fire quickly engulfed the space, accompanied by screams of pain. The flames raged, completely consuming the enemies. The effect of the spell was destructive and instantaneous. He was silent for a while and then loudly expressed his joy by raising his hands. At that moment, a strange sound suddenly came from his body, causing surprise. He turned around abruptly, trying to understand what had happened. After hearing the sound, Kaede realized that it was a level-up signal. A panel with stats appeared in front of him, listing his name, age, race, and skill set. He noticed that his maximum magical energy had increased by 500 units. He also had a new skill, level 1 fire magic. He wondered if this was because he had used the spell earlier. Kaede turned around and noticed that the fire was rapidly spreading through the forest area. The flames engulfed the grass and trees, causing a crackling sound. He watched with alarm as the fire grew larger. He hadn't expected such an effect from his spell. As he struggled to put out the fire, Kaede screamed from the heat and looked around for water. He thought of a possible river nearby, but quickly remembered his ability to use magic. Concentrating, he imagined a stream of water shooting out with the force of a fire hose. The next moment, a stream of water shot out of his hand, aimed at the source of the fire. From Kaede's hand, aimed directly at the burning section of the forest. The screen displayed the message about receiving the spell, Water Magic 1, confirming that the first level of water magic was now available. The fire began to die out under the pressure of the water jet, and the place of the fire was quickly filled with moisture. Below it was indicated that the effectiveness of the magic depended on the owner's intelligence and increased with the increase in skill level. Kaede felt something leave his body while casting magic. He wondered if it was related to the use of magical energy. The screen showed the current mana level as 507 out of 1512. He noticed that the reserve had only decreased by 1 unit. He noted that this spell consumed very little resources. Kaede activated the storage interface and checked the contents of his inventory. An image with 2 cells containing items appeared on the screen. He exhaled and leaned against a tree for a moment. Looking around, he realized that everything that was happening was real. The guy sat down on the grass and admitted that this was not a dream. Night rose over the forest, and a crescent moon shone brightly in the sky. The boy thought about what had happened and tried to comprehend what was happening. He remembered stories where the main character found himself in another world. Realizing this brought him peace in an amazing way. The thought of being transferred to another world gradually settled in his head. Kaede sat on the grass and thought about his life. He remembered that his parents had died in a car accident 2 years ago. He had no relatives or close friends left. He supposed that he was here because he was not attached to Earth. Despite knowing that this was another world, he did not know how to return. The hero looked ahead with a slight smile and accepted what was happening. He realized that if he couldn't go back, he should just live in this world. The guy decided to try to enjoy his new life. He hoped that this world would be bright and pleasant. He didn't want it to be dark and heavy. While Kaede was sitting on the grass, he heard a loud scream. He raised his head sharply, listening to the sound with caution. The guy thought that there might be someone else nearby. Hearing a second scream, he was surprised and alert. The situation required an immediate response. Kaede jumped to his feet, hearing noise and shouts in the distance. He saw a wagon surrounded by a group of people and wild animals. It seemed that the caravan was attacked by several wolves. One of the men fought with the animals, trying to protect his companions. At this time, one of the beasts was preparing to attack with a growl. Kaede recognized the attacking creatures as green dogs and knew he had to intervene. He assessed the situation and realized that his water magic would not reach his target from this distance. Using a fire spell was risky, as it could hit the carriage. Despite his doubts, he decided to try using magic. The boy walked forward, ready to act. Kaede paused and concentrated to visualize the proper form of the spell. He visualized the tip of a spear shooting forward. A sharp stone spike erupted from the ground, pointing toward the enemy. The projectile pierced one of the green dogs, striking accurately. This was the first time he used earth magic in combat. The stone spear pierced the green dog's side but immediately broke. The beast screamed in pain but was not completely defeated. Kaede watched the result of the attack in surprise. He wondered if his magic strike was strong enough. the boy realized that it might not be enough to end the fight. The wounded beast growled, but did not retreat, continuing to threaten. The other dogs also remained in place, watching what was happening. Kaede realized that the attack did not stop the enemies, but slowed them down. He felt that he had gained some time. This gave him a chance to prepare for the next step. The two fighters engaged the remaining dogs and dealt them decisive blows. One of them commanded to concentrate on the largest enemy. His partner confirmed his readiness to act together. The green dog, its mouth open, rushed to attack again. Kaede watched the events without losing his attention. Both warriors coordinated and attacked the large dog simultaneously. One of them rushed forward with a spear. The other with a sword rushed towards him. The beast growled and rushed forward, opening its mouth. Their blows landed precisely, causing a flash of clash. The strength of the fighters was enough to stop the attacker. After the battle ended, Kaede came closer, observing the dead dogs. One of the men thanked him for his help and expressed gratitude for saving him. Another noticed that the guy came from the forest and did not look like an adventurer. He was asked why he was in those places. All three looked at the stranger carefully, waiting for an answer. Kaede replied that he had woken up in the forest and did not remember how he had gotten there. He admitted that he did not know the reason for his appearance in this place. He decided internally not to go into details and to stick to this version. His expression remained calm and confident. One of the fighters asked if Kaede had been attacked by monsters in the forest, noting that he seemed unharmed. The stranger confirmed that everything was fine, adding that he simply happened to be there. They thanked him for his help and called a certain Karak. An elderly man approached the cart, introducing himself as a merchant named Karak. He thanked Kara for saving them and asked if he really had helped. Karak tried to remember the guy's name, but got confused, calling him Suzu. The other one corrected him, clearly pronouncing the name Kaede. Then the merchant apologized for the misunderstanding and clarified that he now correctly understood who was in front of him. The situation moved to a calmer channel. The merchant asked Kaede if he had any money or anything to prove his identity. Karak reminded him that he had mentioned memory loss and offered to help. The boy replied that he had nothing on him. He admitted that he could not prove his identity. The merchant suggested that Kaede might have lost his things in the forest and reminded him that he wouldn't be allowed into town without identification. He handed the boy some money, offering to use it for collateral and to register with the guild. Kaede thanked him for his support and apologized for the inconvenience. In his palms lay a handful of coins, glittering in the light. The gesture was warm and gratuitous. Kaede looked at the coins carefully and asked hesitantly if they were silver. The merchant took this as doubt and asked again if the amount was enough. The guy quickly explained that he didn't mean anything bad. One of the attendants suggested that Kaede had also forgotten what currency was used. The misunderstanding that arose was quickly resolved. The girl in the dress addressed the boy, asking if she remembered his name correctly. Kaede. She introduced herself as Salyur, a receptionist from the Ain Guild, and suggested that he call her simply Sally. She then asked Karak to take the boy with him to the city, saying that she felt awkward leaving him here alone. Karak agreed, and Kaede himself was a little surprised, but did not object. As the carriage continued on its way, Sally decided to explain everything from the beginning. She explained that they were currently on a forest road near Ain. Kaede listened attentively, trying to understand the situation. In order to summarize her story, he mentally tried to put everything in order. The wagon was located near a forest south of the city of Ain. Monsters often appeared in this area, making the journey dangerous. Therefore, Sally and Karak traveled with bodyguards. The map showed the location of the city and the surrounding roads. This explained why their caravan was in this place. Sally explained to Kaede about the monetary system of this world. She explained that the cheapest coin was the iron coin, followed by copper, silver, gold, and large gold. 1 iron coin was equal to 1 tael, which was equivalent to about 10 yen. After finishing her explanation, the girl said that was all for now. Kaede thanked her for the details and tried to remember the new information. Sitting next to Karak, Kaede noticed that there were many things in the cart. He wondered why they were using a regular cart when there were storage boxes in this world. The boy asked directly if it would be easier to carry the goods using a magic container. He wondered why the merchant chose a more cumbersome method of transportation. Karak listened to his remark with a smile. Karak explained that the ability to use the storage box was only available to those with magical talent. He added that such mages were few and far between, and were mostly either experienced adventurers or soldiers. Their services were expensive, so it was unprofitable for merchants to hire them. The storage box was usually used to deliver expensive goods to nobles. Kaede realized that he probably had this ability due to his magical talent. Kaede remembered that he could hide his abilities and data from the displayed status screen with the information analysis skill. He decided to use this function to avoid drawing unnecessary attention. He noted that it would be a good idea to hide skills that looked rare. He glanced at the screen with his skills and thought about precautions. This decision should help him blend in with the people around him. The carriage with passengers arrived at the large city gate. Guards stood on both sides of the entrance, watching the arrivals. Kaede, Sally, and Karak rode up on the carriage, heading inside. Above the arch hung a sign with the inscription Ain, indicating the name of the city. The travelers had successfully reached their destination. At the gate, one of the guards sleepily asked to see his ID. Kaede was confused, as he did not have one. Sally explained that the boy had lost his document. Another guard said that in that case, a deposit of 1 silver coin would be required. He pointed to a device and asked Kaede to touch it. Kaede looked at the magical device on the wall with interest and asked what it was. Sally explained that it was a tool that could evaluate the personality of anyone who touched it. She added that the city could not afford to let bandits in. The guard sitting next to them watched their conversation in silence. Kaede touched the magical device, then quietly repeated the word bandits, thinking about what he had heard. Sally explained that the deposit would be returned upon presentation of the guild card. She reminded him that Karak had already given him the money for registration and offered to go with him. The boy thanked her and noted to himself that she was very kind. Sally walked forward, inviting him to follow her. The magical device displayed information about Kaede's personality, including his name, age, race, gender, and level. The boy was surprised that he could read the inscriptions and connected it with the skill full proficiency in extraterrestrial language. He also realized that this same skill allowed him to communicate with Sally without any problems. One of the guards confirmed that everything was fine and did not notice any irregularities. The information displayed did not arouse suspicion. One of the guards was startled to see that Kaede had a family name, something that only nobles usually did. He suddenly changed his demeanor and apologized for his rudeness. The others, including Sally, did not immediately understand what had happened. Kaede was confused, not understanding why this had caused such a reaction. The situation suddenly became tense. Kaede was surprised by the guard's reaction and began to wonder what the reason was. He assumed that it might be because of the family name, since perhaps only nobles had the right to bear it. Remembering that Karak and Sally had only given first names, he began to doubt whether they were full names. He realized that he might have accidentally passed himself off as a noble. At that moment, someone activated a recognition spell to verify the information. After activating the spell, Guido and Salier's data appeared on the screen, including their age, race, characteristics, and skills. Kaede immediately noticed that they did not have last names. This confirmed his guess that only nobles really had last names. One of the guards asked Kaede to show his data to sort things out completely. The guy felt tense and uncertain about the situation. On the new status screen, Kaede's last name was no longer displayed. One of the guards was surprised to see it was gone and found nothing unusual. The boy had secretly used the information analysis skill to hide the extra data. He apologized and smiled, as if it was a misunderstanding. He knew in his heart that he had to be more careful when introducing himself from now on. Kaede arrived at the Adventurers Guild building in Ain City. The building had a massive wooden gate and stood out from the other buildings. There were several people inside, including a large, lizard-like warrior in armor. One of the guild staff greeted them and offered to begin the registration process. The atmosphere inside was businesslike and lively. Sally thanked Kaede for his help and explained the procedure for registering with the guild. She informed him that after registering, he would receive a guild card, which would serve as identification and give him access to quests. The registration fee was 3 silver coins, When she asked if he was ready to register, the guy confidently said yes. Sally continued the registration process while sitting at the counter. Sally placed the magic box on the table and asked Kaede to touch it. She explained that the device had the same evaluation function as the tool at the city gate. The boy thought about the need to earn money to survive in this world. He smiled and prepared to go through the registration procedure. There were already silver coins on the table for payment. When Kaede touched the box, an expanded list of his skills was displayed on the screen. Sally thanked him, but when she noticed the information, she suddenly froze with a surprised expression. She thought that this interface showed more data than the one at the gate. The guy noticed her reaction and asked if everything was okay. The girl quickly replied that everything was fine, trying to hide her confusion. Sally handed Kaede a guild card and began her explanation. She noted that the card indicated his name, race, gender, and below that, his rank. The boy listened attentively, holding the card in his hands. The girl explained that the lowest rank was G, and the highest was S. She asked him to take the information seriously, as it was important for his future activities. Sally continued to explain the guild's rank system. She explained that rank increases depended on completing quests and defeating monsters. Starting from rank D, you would need to pass a special test to advance, although there were exceptions. She also warned that if you were inactive, your rank could be lowered. The girl spoke with a smile, trying to convey the important information clearly and distinctly. Sally continued to explain the guild's rank system. She explained that rank increases depended on completing quests and defeating monsters. Starting from rank D, you would need to pass a special test to advance, although there were exceptions. She also warned that if you were inactive, your rank could be lowered. The girl spoke with a smile, trying to convey the important information clearly and distinctly. Sally continued her explanation and pointed out that the fourth line on the map shows the number of quests completed. The fifth line records the number of monsters defeated. She added that the information is updated automatically once the quest is completed. Kaede listened attentively, holding the map in his hands. Kaede was surprised to learn of the existence of duels and that bandits were considered monsters. Sally explained that if a bandit was on the list of those defeated, it was not considered a violation. She added that even if a bandit was killed during a mutually agreed upon duel, the killer did not receive the status of a bandit. Sally explained that it was impossible to forge a guild card, and any attempt would be exposed. She added that forgery was punishable by death. Kaede was scared inside, but he held back his emotions. The girl finished her explanation and asked if he had any questions. The guy answered that everything was clear. Sally officially declared Kaede an adventurer. She reminded him to always take responsibility for his actions as a guild member. The boy thanked her for her detailed explanation and agreed with her words. After that, he left, and Sally watched him thoughtfully. One of the guild's employees noticed that the guy called Sally by her first name, which she said was rare. She teased her colleague, suggesting that she might have finally met a good man. Sally tried to distance herself from the conversation, saying it was none of her business, and asked her to get back to work. Sally happily admitted to herself that she had finally found the one she was looking for. She remembered that from the very first glance, she had felt that Kaede was different from the others. Her intuition told her that he seemed to come from another world. Sally recalled how attentively Kaede listened to her explanation and how seriously he took everything. She was amazed by his rare abilities, talent for magic and martial arts. An inner voice told her that he was her destiny. The boy stopped at an inn recommended to him by a soldier at the gate. He lay down on the bed, feeling tired not in his body, but from the amount of events that had happened. Looking through his inventory, he noticed that the items were displayed correctly, including the strange herb that was inside. The hero lay on his bed and thought about the battle with the green dogs. He realized that he had acted recklessly, because he could have died. Realizing the presence of bandits and duels in this world, he decided to act more carefully in the future. With the first rays of the sun, the boy thought about the future, looking out the window. He was worried about whether he would be able to survive in this dangerous and unfamiliar world. The guy felt an appetite, noticing how nice the food smelled. He entered the establishment and was immediately greeted by the waitress. Kaede found himself in a cafe where he was greeted by elf girls dressed as maids. He was surprised to realize who they were, until one of them politely asked if he was there for breakfast. The guy enthusiastically took a seat at the table and asked about the menu, until the elf waitress pointed out that it was already on the table. He internally admired what was happening, forgetting about all his worries, and happily accepted the new reality. Kaede stretched after a hearty breakfast, satisfied with the food. He decided to head to the guild to take on some quests. The hero went outside and headed towards the guild, thinking about the need to earn money. He understood that he would need equipment to go outside the city. The traveler stopped tiredly in the middle of the alley, realizing that he was completely lost. He looked around with alarm, noticing that he was in a deserted and sinister area. In order to get out, he decided to knock on one of the doors and try to ask for directions. The guy knocked on the door and politely asked for directions, but instead of an answer, he heard a suspicious question from the stocky man. The traveler explained that he was simply lost, but the owner of the place was in no hurry to trust the stranger and wanted to know how he ended up in this area. The salesman rudely informed him that there was a weapon shop in front of him, and if the guy wasn't going to buy anything, he'd better leave. The traveler silently looked around the room, where swords, spears, and shields hung. Kaede noted that the shop owner was unfriendly, but immediately assured him that he was interested in buying weapons. He said that he was just about to do so, and in response he was directly asked about his budget. The guy said he had 1,300 bodies, but he planned to earn more soon. The merchant looked at him doubtfully, noting that he couldn't even buy a knife with that amount, and was surprised that he had so little money, despite his talent for martial arts. The hero explained that he had found himself in the forest without memory and without money, but had managed to earn a little along the way. The merchant, noticing his confident movements, noted that if he had been able to survive in the forest, he probably had considerable strength. He added that the young man's past was none of his business. The blacksmith said that he does not sell equipment to those who do not know how to use it, and asked not to tell anyone about this shop. He assessed the traveler's physique, and offered to make a sword and shield for a certain price. He also noted that the young man looked capable enough to become a real swordsman in the future, which was the reason why he did not send him away right away. Kaede promised to return when he had money, and the blacksmith briefly wished him luck and told him not to die. Inwardly, the young man noted that despite the rudeness, he seemed to care. Before leaving, he asked the shop owner for directions to the guild. Kaede approached the guild building and politely greeted Sally, who was carrying a stack of papers. He asked if he could take the quest. The girl nodded and offered to come with her so she could explain everything. Sally led him to the task board and explained that he had to select a task of the appropriate rank and return it to the counter. Since Kaede was still a G rank, he could only do simple tasks like gather herbs or help with cargo. He chose a quest to collect herbs. Sally clarified that it was about Zunana, a herb used as a hemostatic agent. She added that the guild currently had a shortage of this resource and was willing to buy the herb for 30 bodies apiece. Surprised, Kaede asked if the herb was rare. Sally explained that it was not rare per se, but that a poisonous variety of Zunana usually grew around it, making it difficult to gather much. Most people found it by accident. Looking into his inventory, Kaede showed him the herb he had found and asked if it was suitable. Sally immediately recognized the plant and confirmed it. Thanking her for the explanation, he thought he knew where to look for it, in the very forest where he had first woken up. Later, he returned to the forest and tried to find grass, but to no avail. Kaede was tired and realized that he had not yet managed to collect anything. The young man examined the herbs he had collected and realized that he had not taken into account the presence of poisonous plants. He noticed that the poison was weak and could only be used for minor mischief. He tried to use the information analysis skill to identify the herbs he wanted. He came up with the idea of using the skill as a radar, but at first it didn't work. When he held one of the samples in his hand, a symbol appeared. The boy realized that this was the required Zunana herb, and the mark probably only appeared if he himself saw it. Activating the skill again, he saw many glowing symbols and realized that he could now quickly collect the required amount of grass. Sally was surprised by the number of plants he had collected and asked if he had confused them with poisonous ones. Kaede replied that he had used the appraisal skill and checked each specimen. He added that all the samples were longer than 15 centimeters, as stated in the task. Sally began checking, and the device unexpectedly responded to the collected plants. Sally reacted sharply to the guy's claim that he used the skill, evaluation for sorting herbs. She reminded him that he hadn't had this skill the last time he checked, and began to question him suspiciously about how he had managed to collect so many. The guy tried to justify himself, but was clearly confused. Kaede stated that he did have the skill, even though it wasn't displayed in his status. He added that it was thanks to this that he was able to gather so much of the necessary grass. The girl looked at him doubtfully, wondering if this was too far-fetched. The guild employee admitted that she had overdone it with her emotions and apologized. She recalculated the payment for the grass 6,090 telephone. The guy felt relieved, realizing that he had managed to avoid unnecessary suspicions. Sally still doubted, but accepted the result. The next day, the boy returned to the gunsmith's shop to buy the shield he had ordered. He said hello and told him the purpose of his visit. The blacksmith greeted him with restraint, but soon shouted at him to stop chatting and come inside. While the guest was looking around the room, the blacksmith continued working on the piece. The boy noticed the engraved name, Dovra, and wondered if it was the blacksmith's name. Meanwhile, the master concentrated on finishing the forging. When the work was finished, Dovra asked if the boy had brought the money. He confirmed that everything was ready, adding that he knew magic and the shield would be very useful to him. The blacksmith seemed surprised that he had returned earlier than expected. Kaede was surprised to learn that he had a talent for magic and asked if he needed a staff. The blacksmith, upon learning this, noted that given his fighting talent, it would be better for the young man to focus on the path of a swordsman. The man explained that this was the first time he had heard of a mage without a staff, because without it, it was difficult to concentrate while moving. Even when using magic, its speed was significantly lower without a special tool. The guy reasoned that the power of magic remains the same, but it will be difficult to hit the target without accelerating the spell. He came to the conclusion that the staff still increases speed, and thought about improving his abilities with its help. He admitted that he might want to buy a staff later, but he decided to be careful anyway. The blacksmith warned that many talented people had died because of overconfidence. When the conversation turned to the shield, the blacksmith offered him one to hold. As the young man tried on the equipment, he thought with gratitude about how friendly this craftsman was. One of the shields seemed to Kaede to be suitable in weight and feel. The blacksmith, again relying on visual assessment, immediately suggested the right option, which again surprised the guy. The blacksmith, satisfied with the result, asked the client's opinion. The guy looked at the shield he had just received with interest and admitted that it looked decent. When the newcomer held the shield in his hands, he felt as if it had become a part of his body. He noted to himself that Master Dovra truly knew his business. Then the boy started talking about the process of forging swords, and asked if tempering was used. However, the blacksmith did not understand what was being discussed. The young man explained the principle. The metal heats up after the blow and then cools down quickly. The blacksmith tried the proposed method, but the shape of the workpiece turned out to be distorted. However, he was surprised to see how hard the metal had become, and he suggested that if it was cooled slowly after being heated slightly, the material might have become softer. Dovra admitted that he did not know where the young man got such knowledge, but he found it interesting. He decided to close the forge for 2 days and promised, if the experiment with the sword was successful, he would give it away for free. Kaede, watching the blacksmith leave, noted to himself that the service had been rude, but Dovra seemed simply passionate about his work. He decided not to pay attention to it. The next day, the boy went out into the city to look around and learn more about the local adventurers. Although he was uncomfortable using evaluation on people, he still wanted to gather as much information as possible. After analyzing, he noticed that the magic level of mages and ordinary fighters was almost the same. Almost no one had rare skills like magic talent or battle talent. He looked around the stalls, but found nothing special other than magical meat for sale. Kaede settled on a bun with green wolf filling. The guy noted that clothes in this world were miraculously cleaned of dirt with simple water. He remembered his previous world and admitted to himself that he especially missed the opportunity to take a bath. Too busy with collecting grass, Kaede didn't notice how evening had come. Realizing that it was already dark, he decided to return to the city. Kaede was suddenly confronted by a green wolf attacking from above. He dodged and prepared for the attack, deciding to strike when it landed. The guy released a fireball towards the opponents, but there were several wolves. He realized that he was deep in the forest, and the situation was becoming dangerous. The beasts began to surround him, growling menacingly. He tried to assess the situation, but realized that he was at a disadvantage. He used the fireball spell again, During the attack, he gained a level up and noticed that there were only 2 enemies left, but soon realized that one was still hiding. One of the wolves attacked from the tree above. Kaede reacted with surprise, realizing that the enemy had attacked unexpectedly. The beast knocked him down, and he found himself in a dangerous position. After receiving blows, he tried to concentrate to activate the magic by visualizing the spell. Kaede activated the spell Stone Spear, striking several enemies at once. The magic hit the wolves from all sides, causing serious damage to them. One of the wolves was destroyed, but the others managed to react and surrounded Kaede. The guy admitted that he had not acted carefully enough and almost paid for it. He later returned with the collected plants, causing shock to those around him. The girl accepting the goods noted that she had stopped applying common sense to him. Kaede confirmed that he had been collecting Zunana all day and had gone too far because of it, where he had encountered wolves. He calmly explained that he had defeated them with magic. Sally was surprised to learn that he had taken on a group of green wolves on his own. She didn't understand how a mage could stand up to the monsters. The boy explained that he used a shield to defend himself and at the same time attacked with magic. The girl pointed out that such a combination required high concentration and should not be possible. The girl suggested calling a mage or using a potion to heal the guy, but he assured her that he was not injured. He became interested in the existence of restoration spells and decided to learn more about magic. The hero pondered the characteristics of this world, noting that his mana was over 2,000 and regenerated faster than normal. He decided that he should use more powerful spells and find a way to compensate for his lack of perception. He decided to develop his magic and set himself the goal of becoming a magical swordsman with the help of his cheat ability. The boy went into the forest to practice and understand how his magic works. He decided to focus on search magic to make up for his lack of perception. He began experimenting with the direction of the magical energy, imagining it coming from his hand and reaching the tree. He managed to direct the magical energy towards the target, and he watched in surprise as it began to manifest in space. The boy enthusiastically felt how his magic allowed him to sense the texture of the tree bark and decided to expand the range of the spell. He focused on increasing the coverage to better explore the detection capabilities. However, once the magic covered too large an area, a huge amount of information began to flow into his mind. He was unable to cope with the influx of data and began to lose control of himself. The boy could barely stand on his feet. After activating the magic, his face expressed complete exhaustion. He realized that he would not be able to use such a spell in a real fight, because there was too much unnecessary information in his head, and he felt like he was about to explode. Kaede wondered why the spell was so overloaded, and came to the conclusion that he had not specified what he wanted to find. He decided to try again, expand the magical energy around him, and filter it using information analysis. The boy activated the magic and saw a window with a circular map appear in front of him. He realized that the map only showed objects within a certain radius. At the same time, the way the magic manifested itself changed on its own, which surprised him. He thought that if you overlap the search maps, you can get more information. The guy happily announced that he had succeeded. He had completed the creation of a simplified magic radar. A circular map was displayed on the screen in front of him, indicating the successful activation of the new spell. The hero analyzes the new magic skill. He notes that the perception radius now reaches 50 meters. Maintaining magic does not require any costs, and now he will not be caught off guard. He learns that this spell is called Magic of Perception. The hero remembers that the blacksmith promised to give him the sword in 3 days, and decides to go to him. On the way, he reflects on the tempering process, which intrigues him. Approaching the forge, the hero greets and asks if the sword is ready. The blacksmith confirms that everything is ready, yawning from fatigue. The hero is surprised by the strength of the metal used for the sword. He assumes that the charcoal metal is probably steel and concludes that the blacksmith used wrought iron before, which is less hardened. Doverag reveals that he made the sword yesterday and considers it one of his best works. He suggests using it until the hero finds B-class material. The hero hesitantly agrees to try the sword that the blacksmith hands him. Despite the fact that he has never swung a sword before, he takes it in his hands. The boy swung his sword, not realizing that his body had reacted to the movement. He was surprised at how natural his blow felt, and the blacksmith watched with interest. The master noticed that he didn't look like a newbie at all, and assumed that he had wielded a sword before. The boy smiled, surprised at how useful his martial arts skills had been. Kaede was hesitant about keeping such a handy sword, but the blacksmith assured him it was a small thing, since he could now make the weapon more stable. In response, he wondered if he was being too generous with his techniques. The hero calmly said that he was not against his knowledge being spread, because the techniques were created to be used. He added that he had nothing to lose by sharing them with others. Dovarag asked if the boy didn't wear armor because he was a mage. Upon hearing this, he admitted that if he had to choose, he would prefer light armor that didn't hinder his movements. Remembering that he had been pleased with his shield all this time, the boy admitted that he had completely forgotten about protecting his body. The blacksmith offered leather armor suitable for his needs. The hero listened attentively to Dovarag, who said that he himself only worked with metal armor. However, he recommended another leather craftsman and advised him to refer to him when visiting. The guy was surprised who exactly he would meet. Perhaps it would be another dwarf. At the store, he was warmly greeted by a girl who immediately realized that he was a newcomer. The hero confirmed that he came on Dovarag's recommendation and said that he needed armor. The girl was surprised that such an inexperienced adventurer was sent by Dovarag himself. The girl immediately noticed the sword's resemblance to Dovarag's work and asked to examine it. Having received permission, she easily checked the blade, demonstrating good knowledge. The hero noted to himself how attentive she was to detail. The girl tested the sword by cutting the object and was delighted with the quality of the steel. The hero was dumbfounded by her actions, but noticed that there seemed to be no one else in the shop. He began to guess that she was the craftsman. The girl happily confirmed that the sword was indeed from the Dovra forge, and expressed admiration for the quality of the steel. It was the first time she had seen such a blade. Kaede assumed that she was the master in question. The craftswoman explained that a good sword requires appropriate armor, and offered to make it to order. The hero inquired with interest about the available materials. The girl replied that she could make armor from any suitable material. Kaede looked at the green wolf skin, but heard that it had low defense and was vulnerable to fire. The girl added that if hit by fire, the armor would immediately burn away. Due to the limited choice, they settled on Gargon skin. The girl explained that her shop was aimed at beginners, so she couldn't afford expensive materials. The guy wondered why she was proud of that. He noticed the armor standing on the mannequin, and asked if it was part of the assortment. The girl said that the armor was created with the function of automatically activating magical protection at the expense of the user's mana, but due to the high consumption of mana, almost no one uses it. The guy was happy that the armor would suit him perfectly, because he had high mana regeneration. The girl confirmed that the armor was now simply decorating the store. He used the analysis skill to check the armor's characteristics. The hero realized that the armor consumed 20 mana per hour, but his mana level allowed him to use it without limitation. He came to the conclusion that such armor would be useless for ordinary adventurers. He asked how much the armor cost and how much it protected. The girl replied that it was comparable in strength to Gargonian leather, so the price would be the same. The guy said he would just try the armor, despite the girl's warning, and added that if the result was unsatisfactory, he would switch to the leather version. Her reaction showed relief and approval. After taking measurements, the girl said that the armor would be ready by the following evening and asked him to come when the evening bell rang. The guy agreed. Kaede asked if she sold anything other than armor and said he wanted to buy a staff. The girl advised him to check out the magic shop next door. As soon as he expressed his intention, the sorceress immediately appeared, surprising everyone with her sudden visit. The girl expressed dissatisfaction with the fact that she connected to her store without permission. The guy was amazed by the appearance of a real sorceress, noting that she looked like a typical representative of magicians. She smiled affably. The sorceress confirmed that she sells various goods and immediately took the guy's hand, inviting him into her store. The girl noted that he was recommended by Dovarag Sana, and the guy was surprised by the popularity of this name. The merchant led Kaede into a spacious room with a high ceiling, where magical lamps floated in the air. The boy looked at the magical setting in surprise, amazed by the scale. Approaching the display case with the staffs, the saleswoman asked which one Kaede was interested in. He looked around the display case with many different models in admiration. The girl explained that the length of the staff directly affects the speed of magic. The longer it is, the faster the spell works. However, she added that controlling the staff becomes more difficult as its length increases. The merchant showed a 60 centimeters long staff, noting that although it was slow, it was suitable for fighting in tight spaces like dungeons. Kaede thought about it and agreed that it was a logical choice for such conditions. With a smile, Kaede asked if she had a staff that increased the speed of magic threefold. The merchant laughed softly, explaining that a staff only 20 centimeters long would be impractical and useless. The guy noted that he uses both a sword and a shield, so he would prefer a staff that would not interfere in combat. He added that his magic is already fast enough, and a threefold increase would be optimal. Kaede noticed that his words seemed strange to the merchant, but she agreed to make the staff by tomorrow. However, she warned that she would not be held responsible if it turned out to be useless. The young man thought that he would be satisfied if he got the staff he wanted. He also noted that magic swordsmen were rare in this world, as magic required concentration. The merchant couldn't help but laugh when Kaede suggested simply cutting off a piece of the staff. The boy was excited that his equipment would soon be ready, even though he didn't fully understand the structure of the staff. The next day, Kaede came to the guild to talk about rank promotion. The staff member admitted that his contribution was enough to advance. However, she explained that in order to be promoted for the first time, one had to complete one of the simple tasks. Kaede realized that this was part of the general experience system. Looking at the list of tasks, Kaede saw that G rank required tasks such as cleaning up trash and carrying cargo. He wondered which task to choose. Kaede chose the iron ore transport mission despite it being considered odd. A guild member noted that the mission was considered unpopular, although it was technically suitable for rank advancement. Sally, a fellow guild member, tried to dissuade Kaede from taking the quest, pointing out its disadvantage. However, the boy assured her that he could handle it, since he had a spatial inventory. Kaede learned that the capacity of the spatial inventory depends on its maximum mana when opened and when used. The guild member explained how the slot calculation system works. Kaede realized that the number of slots in his spatial inventory was equal to his initial mana pool, and each slot had a capacity limit. He decided that this quest would be beneficial for him, and thanked him before leaving. Kaede ran across the field with the furry creature, moving at a speed of 20 kilometers per hour. He was surprised at his own endurance and thought that at that pace he could beat the Olympians in a marathon. Kaede noted that after leveling up, he could run all day without getting tired. When he reached the village, he approached the man at the entrance and said that he had come on a mission from the guild, and then showed his card. The man pointed to a huge pile of iron ore and told the hero to take as much as he could carry. The guy confirmed that he understood everything, and the worker was convinced that the ore was real. Watching Kaede, the man was surprised by his fragile appearance and wondered if he could handle it. Suddenly, a strong premonition came over him, and he began to watch what was happening with tension. When Kaede started collecting the ore, he reported that he had placed about 1,500 kilograms in his box. The worker was amazed, as he said that such boxes usually hold no more than 200 kilograms. The man admitted that he needed help with transportation and offered to continue working for Kaede in the future. The guy replied that he was willing to help, although he did not know how long he would stay in the city. Kaede noted that his box had only just filled one slot. The man asked in surprise if it was possible to fit more, and the boy confirmed that it was. After clarifying that he had more than 1,000 free cells left, Kaede chuckled slightly. The man asked in shock if he was the embodiment of the box, to which the guy replied that he was still a person. The workers at the processing plant watched in amazement as Kaede delivered the enormous amount of ore. He calmly reported that he had only brought what he could, and the total weight was 10 tons. One of the workers asked how many times the boy had made the trip, and was shocked to learn that Kaede had brought it all in one go. He admitted that he could have brought more, but was stopped to leave room for future deliveries. After delivering the ore, Kaede was promoted to F rank. The merchant reacted with shock, and he tried on the shortened staff, which fit perfectly despite his doubts about the item's usefulness. Kaede thanked her and confidently stated that the equipment was more than enough. He was fully equipped and ready for new challenges, and his companion watched him with a smile. The girls looked at the staff with a smile, noting its cute appearance. Soon after, Kaede set off at high speed, ready for new challenges in the forest. He decided to test his gear in a real fight, and headed deeper into the forest. Receiving a signal from the device, he noticed something on the radar and hurried to the target, ready for a confrontation. The boy found himself face to face with a huge pack of green wolves and began to worry that their numbers were beyond his capabilities. He estimated the enemy's number at about 500 individuals and realized that if he retreated, he could unwittingly lead them into the city. Seeing no other way out, Kaede decided to join the fight and used a potion of accelerated mana recovery, which increases its regeneration tenfold. He had purchased this potion in advance from the magic shop. He activated the magical equipment, realizing that the item was useless to normal mages, but it was perfect for him. The wolves began to approach, and he got into a fighting stance, preparing to attack. The enemy was within range, and the boy cast the spell, Rock Spear. Stone spears began to burst out of the ground, striking the wolves from above and causing them confusion. He noted with satisfaction that the spell had worked. Watching the wolves' reactions, Kaede remembered how he had studied magic and come to understand its mechanisms during his training. The boy thought about the mechanics of spell amplification. Increasing mana tenfold did not increase the attack radius to the same extent. He could increase the power, but not faster than 10 mana per second. The hero activated the spell Fireball, launching a series of fireballs towards the enemies. He decided to use multiple magic to deal with the numerical superiority. After the attack, traces of the scorched bodies of wolves remained on the field, and the battle system issued a notification sound. He watched the result of his attack from a distance. Despite the losses, the remaining wolves continued their advance. The hero used magic again and began to retreat, keeping his distance. He turned with a new series of attacks, covering the area in front of him with firebolts, the force of the explosions throwing the attackers back. The hero observed the destruction and the remains of the wolves. He noted that the behavior of these creatures was primitive and predictable. Standing on the charred ground, he reflected on how quickly the attack had ended. Despite its success, he realized that only 3 minutes had passed since the battle began. Kaede looked at the battle results with satisfaction, confident in his efficiency. He noted that he had spent 3 minutes usefully, and next to it were his current stats and skills, including many types of magic and high levels of intelligence and agility. The guy noted that he had to face 513 green wolves in total, and wondered if it was typical for these creatures to gather in such large packs. After that, he decided to go back and report the situation to his partner, but first he wanted to collect everything that was left after the fight. Meanwhile, there was a creature behind him. This massive creature with thick, scaly armor hunted other beasts. The creature slowly crept forward, emitting dull sounds that vibrated the ground. Sally asked him in surprise if he had actually defeated 513 green wolves. She noted that such creatures did not usually gather in such large packs, and asked where he had found them. The boy calmly explained that he had noticed them about 15 minutes after entering the forest. Kaede wondered if he was unlucky, or if he had gained a lot of experience. The girl explained that a pack of 100 wolves was normal, but 500 was not. After that, she expressed relief that he was okay, and offered to buy 100 green wolf carcasses from him. He calmly agreed. The boy came to Dovereg and asked him to fix his sword and shield. The master carefully examined the equipment and immediately realized that he had been hunting green wolves. From the condition of the weapon, he also determined that the hunt had lasted more than 2 days. Doverag examined the equipment carefully and noticed that Kaede's shield was scratched by the green wolf's claws, and the sword was clearly used to attack multiple opponents at once. He concluded that Kaede had already killed hundreds of monsters. The boy assumed that he had become a better fighter due to his increased stats, but Dovera expressed his doubts. He admitted that he had underestimated Kaede at first, but was now impressed by his progress. Kaede, in turn, was amazed by the blacksmith's insight. After completing the repairs, the blacksmith reported that he had only fixed the sword, but the shield was in good condition. He was about to advise replacing the weapon, but changed his mind. Kaede thanked him, a little surprised by the decision. Doverag explained that Kaede's sword, while strong, was only iron. It was noticeably weaker than a weapon made of rare material or special metal. The blacksmith advised him to carry a spare sword in reserve. Kaede inquired about the price of a sword made from dragon material. Doverag replied that the cost starts from 4 billion bodies, since there are very few parts of a dragon suitable for forging. The blacksmith added that the dragons themselves are so rare that they are considered legendary monsters. He explained that the appearance of a dragon can destroy entire countries and cause chaos in the world. Kaede asked what material would be suitable for the sword if dragon metal was too expensive. Dovurag replied that the metal from the body of a so-called metal lizard, a B-rank creature whose skin is covered in a hard shell, would be suitable. The blacksmith explained that the skin of the metal lizard was used to forge swords. He added that these creatures were extremely durable, and ordinary swordsmen would be no match for them. If such a creature appeared in a small town without strong mages, chaos would ensue. Kaede thought that he would hardly encounter these monsters anytime soon, but he would like to try to defeat them in the future. Dovurag explained that metal lizards even surpass dragons in physical defense, and a sword made from their material would cost at least 5 million. The next day, Kaede approached the guild building and noticed that it was closed. He saw a message on the board stating an emergency and asking all capable fighters to head to the forest gate. There were many people gathered at the gate, and Kaede approached Sally to find out what was going on. The girl was also surprised and immediately called out his name before telling him the details. Sally explained that after Kaede's words about the green wolves, they sent out scouts. They discovered a large number of monsters approaching the city. Thanks to Kaede, the guild had time to prepare. Fighters began to gather around the city gates, discussing that they would have to hold off the attack. Kaede noted that, judging by the girl's words, there would be many enemies, and it was good that the attack was discovered in advance. Otherwise, the city could have been destroyed. Sally explained that there were monsters with powerful ramming power among the attackers, so the gate alone would not be enough to defend. She asked Kaede to fight on the front lines, adding that there would be a reward for everyone involved in the battle. The boy expressed doubt, reminding her that he was a newbie, but Sally explained that the monsters in their city were weak and he was one of the strongest adventurers. The girl asked for help on the front lines, and Kaede was surprised that the guild was really that weak. Kaede agreed to help, realizing that he had no choice. Sally thanked him and added that he would be a key figure in the defense. Then one of the fighters turned to Sally and said that their squad was ready to move with Kaede. Kaede suddenly took off and ran towards the forest. The others, including Sally, watched his sudden outburst in surprise. The girl did not understand why he ran out so quickly and exclaimed in confusion. As he raced forward, the young man reflected that he couldn't refuse the mission, especially considering his attachment to this place. He decided that fighting on the front lines would be a good opportunity to gain experience, and vowed to stop the monsters from invading the city. Kaede knew that his mana was not infinite, even with the accelerated recovery potion. He estimated that he could last about 20 minutes at full power, so he decided to distribute his power wisely. He was going to fight the close opponents with his sword and cast spells on the distant enemies. The wolves began to surround him, but the young man remained focused and prepared to attack. After leveling up, Kaede felt his magic strengthen and was confident in himself. However, a huge boar suddenly burst out of the forest, and the young man realized with alarm that he was facing a new enemy. Kaede immediately used the spell Stone Spear against the beast, but even a series of attacks could not stop the monster, which continued to pose a threat. He realized that this was probably the monster the girl had mentioned. The young man activated identification and found out that it was a Gorgon with enormous power and almost zero mana. Even though it took 7 spells to reduce the monster's HP by only 30%, at one point its HP suddenly dropped to 0. Kaede wondered if he had landed a critical hit, though he still doubted he had actually defeated the creature. Kaede thought about the strange behavior of the monsters. He noticed that, unlike the green wolves he had met earlier, all the creatures were moving in a straight line, as if they were running from something unknown. He followed the direction they came from, hoping to find out the reason. As he climbed higher, he saw a clear trail of many creatures running in one direction. He was alarmed by such orderliness. As he moved forward, the young man confirmed his suspicion that the wolves were indeed fleeing from the threat. He began to wonder what exactly could have frightened so many monsters, and what was further along their path. A moment later, a giant metal lizard appeared in front of him. Its characteristics were impressive: incredible strength, high speed, and a complete lack of magical energy. The creature inspired fear with its appearance. Kaede recognized it as the same metal lizard that Dovurag had mentioned. He realized that all the monsters were running from this enemy. Despite having less health than the Galgon, its armor made it extremely resistant to damage. The boy quickly realized that going into battle alone was a bad idea. He decided to return as soon as possible and report everything to the guild, but suddenly noticed something in the surrounding forest that made him wary. The metal lizard let out a furious roar and suddenly gave chase. Kaede was shocked by its speed and realized that the enemy was faster than him. The boy tried to retreat, but the monster was quickly closing the distance. He realized that physical attacks and even a rock spear would be useless due to the enemy's strong armor. Kaede decided to concentrate his magic for a minute to increase the attack power. After finishing his preparations, he released a powerful spell, Great Fireball. The magic hit its target, but the metal lizard remained completely unharmed. The boy was shocked, not expecting that the attack would be useless. The monster suddenly rushed into attack and easily threw Kaede back. The guy received a blow from which he did not have time to defend himself. Even though the blow only grazed his leg, it broke the bone. Kaede thanked fate for the healing magic he had learned, because a direct hit would have meant instant death. He knew he couldn't let that monster get into the city. Kaede declared with determination that he would definitely defeat the enemy. He realized that he did not have a suitable magic spell with a penetrating effect, so he decided to create a new one, similar to how he used earth magic before. The young man tried to activate the new magic, but it didn't work. He was surprised, wondering if there was some other special condition needed for this, besides imagination. He realized that he had little chance with his current spells, but he remembered one option. Despite the approaching danger, Kaede decided to use special magic. Since magic, unlike a sword, can be stored to increase the power of an attack, he reasoned that the metal lizard's armor was similar to that of a tank, and the only way to penetrate it was to apply pressure. Kaede then chose a spell called Magic Pressure 3 Inches, which I studied earlier during training. He decided to go all in, pouring all his remaining mana into the spell. To prepare it, he needs to hold out for 15 minutes, dodging the enemy's attacks, especially the tail throws. Using his combat sense, Kaede calculated the enemy's trajectory and was able to deflect the attack. However, even while defending himself, he still felt intense pain from the attack. Kaede finished his preparations and reported that 15 minutes had passed. He focused on finding a weak spot in the monster's armor, choosing an area that was rarely hit. He decided to attack the metal lizard's back, believing it to be the most vulnerable area. The boy quickly approached to strike from behind. He let out his attack with a scream, putting all his remaining strength into it. This was his final attempt to break through the monster's armor. The pressure spell was fired at the intended target, and a hole was created in the lizard's body. Energy rushed out, engulfing the monster. The boy watched the beast's reaction, clenching his teeth with tension. He hoped that the blow worked and wondered if he had managed to win. The monster screamed furiously, writhing in pain. Kaede, out of breath after the attack, tried to assess whether the fight was over and watched his opponent's reaction. Kaede breathed heavily as he watched the metal lizard's body collapse with its armor pierced. He barely held back a smile and, slightly incredulous at what had happened, said that he had managed it after all. The battle is over. The young man walked through the forest, monitoring the situation with the radar. He was convinced that all the monsters driven out by the metal lizard had retreated, and the area was now safe. Kaede hoped that his companions were okay, and soon heard Sally calling his name. The girl rushed to him in relief, glad that he was safe. Kaede calmly asked why she thought he might have died. The girl exclaimed that he had disappeared even though the monsters had already retreated, and accused him of rushing forward alone. Sally screamed at the boy, accusing him of making her worry. She could barely hold back her tears, and he hung his head and apologized, inwardly surprised by her strong reaction. The girl reproached the boy for taking her instructions too literally and risking his life. Kaede tried to justify himself in response, but still admitted that she had indeed said something like that. The girl asked what he had been doing while the other monsters were retreating. The warrior calmly explained that he had been exploring the area because he had encountered a metal lizard. Kaede calmly stated that he had already defeated the metal lizard, while Sally was panicking and thinking about calling the mages for help because of the threat. His words left her stunned. The boy smiled and explained that he believed that it was because of his victory over the monster that the other creatures retreated. The girl was shocked by what she heard. Sally remembered that Kaede combined magic and sword, and this explained his success to her. She asked if he could use wind magic, which surprised the boy. The girl said that defeating such a monster usually requires a group of C-rank mages and above. According to her, you need to lift the lizard with the wind and burn it from the inside with fire, after which she asked how Kaede managed to do it alone. The guy explained that he had simply pierced the armor from behind with his magic, and wondered if this particular monster was less protected. He added that he could show the body that he had in his inventory. Sally was surprised to confirm that it was indeed a metal lizard, and assumed that the damage must be on the back. While they were examining the body, Kaede offered to help, which confused the girl. While the boy pointed to the hole in the lizard's armor, the girl awkwardly asked him to let her go first. He apologized, and she sat down next to him, still surprised. The girl examined the hole in the monster's body and admitted that she had never heard of magic that could create such a destructive effect. She concluded that its magic was fundamentally different from their own. She thanked Kaede for defeating the lizard and said that she would go and report to her superiors. The guy decided to say goodbye, but she suddenly said that he should go with her too. In the guild building, the boy immediately apologized to the older man, bowing in apology. The older man was surprised, but invited him to rise, explaining that they themselves had long suspected that something was wrong with the monsters. The guild leader admitted his mistake, saying that he ignored the signs of a powerful monster. He thanked Kaede on behalf of the entire guild, noting that without him, there would have been many casualties. The young man replied that the victory had not come easy and added that the situation was clear. No one could have known in advance about the appearance of such a strong enemy. The old man, in turn, praised him not only for his strength, but also for his understanding. Kaede was surprised by the guild leader's request to keep the fact of defeating the metal lizard a secret. He explained that he wanted to avoid panic and misunderstandings among the residents. The guild leader explained that even rumors of a metal lizard appearing would cause a stir. In his opinion, no one would believe that an ordinary adventurer could defeat such a monster. The man added that it was only a request, and if Kaede wanted, the guild could officially announce it. However, the young man declined such publicity with a smile. Kaede admitted that it would be difficult for him to keep it a secret, as he wanted to tell Dovereg about it. The guild leader did not object to hearing the name, and noted that he was good at keeping secrets and rarely interacted with others. The guild leader explained that there was no equipment in the city to process the metal lizard. He advised Kaede to head southeast to a dwarven mining town, where there were special workshops suitable for such work. Kaede decided to go to the forge town of Herrera to create a weapon from the remains of the metal lizard. He noted that by doing so, he was leaving the town, since there were almost no strong monsters left nearby. The boy decided to say goodbye to those who helped him, as he had little time left before leaving. He realized that for traveling in this world, it is better to move at night and rest during the day. The blacksmith Dovereg, apparently, already knew that he would leave the city. Kaede came to the girl with a bunch of grass and said that he was going to leave the city. She was surprised and immediately asked if this was related to the conversation with the guild leader. The boy explained that he was going to the city of Herrera to make a new weapon. The girl thought about how rarely adventurers left the cities and tried to contain her excitement. He reported that the cause of the trouble with the green wolves was the metal lizard he had already defeated. The girl agreed that the city was now safe even without him. Thinking back to his first days in this world, Kaede thought how lucky he was to have met a kind girl like Sally. She nodded, suggesting that he wait to sell the weed. After saying goodbye, he thanked her for everything and expressed hope that they would meet again. She took the grass and replied with a smile that she also hoped for a new meeting. Sally said goodbye with a smile, hoping to meet again in the future. The guy who was looking at her also said goodbye silently, setting off on his way through the mountains. On the 5th day of the journey, Kaede noticed that he had reached the halfway point of the route to Herrera. He estimated that he was moving twice as fast as a horse and would soon reach the city. In the forest, the map showed a cluster of people moving around the road. He was surprised to see strange silhouettes that resembled scenes of abduction. The young man hid behind a tree and saw a group of armed men holding a tied-up child. He began to follow them to understand the situation. He thought that such criminals were called bandits. His suspicion grew when he realized that one of them was guarding a prisoner. The guy decided that he had to make sure that they were really bandits because according to the guild rules they had to be either killed or captured. He prepared to act. The young man used his recognition skill and confirmed that all 6 men were indeed bandits. He prepared for his first fight against humans, realizing the seriousness of the situation. One of the bandits went away under the pretext of needing to relieve himself, arousing the suspicion of the others. Soon a strange sound was heard in the forest, which alarmed the entire group. The leader ordered 2 subordinates to check the source of the noise, and they headed deeper into the forest. 2 bandits came across a strange tree, cut by a powerful blow. One of them approached in surprise, unaware of the danger. At that moment, the young man quickly jumped from the tree, attacking from above. Kaede used pressure magic, attacking several opponents at once. The flow of force threw the bandits back, causing them to suffer sharp pain and lose their balance. Despite the weak mark, the magic was powerful enough to disrupt their physical condition. The other bandits stood up from their seats with difficulty and fear when the young man approached them. One of them managed to start a question, trying to find out who he was, but did not have time to finish. At this time, the warrior decisively moved forward, leaving no doubt about his intentions. The hero stood among the bodies of his fallen enemies and breathed a sigh of relief. He admitted that he had only wanted to capture them, but even the weakened magic had proven deadly. Although it was his first time killing people, he felt no guilt. Kaede approached the girl he had just freed and noticed that she was not coming to her senses. After checking her condition with his skill, he saw that she was under the influence of forced hypnosis, and he did not immediately understand how this condition could be cured. The young man reached the city, carrying the girl in his arms, and still did not understand how exactly the spell of forced hypnosis worked. He hoped that there would be a way to cure her, and asked for help from the guards who approached the gate. The enraged, bearded man, seeing the unconscious girl, shouted at Kaede, demanding an explanation and accusing him of what he had done to his daughter. The warrior was confused, not immediately understanding what he was being accused of. The dwarf ran up to the young man, recognizing the victim as his daughter, and immediately accused him. Kaede panicked and tried to explain, saying that he had found the girl in the forest and saved her from bandits, but mentioned the strange spell she was under. 2 guards rushed to intervene, calming the situation. One of them assured Kaede that forced hypnosis could be easily cured with medicine, and the other thanked him for saving the girl and offered to carry her himself. After the misunderstanding, Kaede was told that his daughter had not returned from the forest, and he was in despair. The other guards calmed the situation by noting that dwarves were hot-tempered. The dwarf apologized to the boy for the false accusation. The dwarf introduced himself and thanked the boy for saving his daughter. He offered to help him in the city if he needed anything. Then he invited him to join the celebration in honor of the girl's return, without listening to the question about the forge. At the feast, everyone was happy about the girl's rescue, raising their mugs. Kaede noted that the dwarf did not listen to him, but he realized that he was too happy about his daughter's return. He noticed tools similar to those in Dovereg's workshop. The girl approached the guy and thanked him for saving her, calling herself Sumisa. She admitted that she did not remember what happened to her, but she looked like she had already recovered. Sumisa confirmed that she was feeling well and apologized for delaying his journey. She wondered if he was traveling as an adventurer. The girl suggested using a local workshop if he needed to make a weapon. Kaede was surprised to learn that they could actually process lizard metal, and began asking about the cost. Upon hearing the price, the warrior realized that he did not have enough money. However, Sumizu's father, offered to make the weapon for half the price as thanks for saving his daughter. Kaede asked if he could sell the materials, claiming he had a metal lizard body. His words were met with disbelief, but he decided to show off the contents of his inventory in person. After the appearance of the huge metal lizard body, everyone was amazed. One of the men noted that it was really incredible to have the whole carcass of such a creature with you. The warrior explained that his inventory was slightly larger than usual, although the situation seemed familiar to him. One of the specialists confirmed that the quality of the body was well preserved. The buyer offered a price of 3 million bodies per kilogram, specifying that he would not buy everything at once, but his offer was more advantageous than the guild's. Kaede agreed with surprise. After the deal was made, Sumizu began preparing for work and called everyone to help. He asked the boy if he knew fire magic and confirmed that it was time to cut up the lizard. The hero inquired what exactly needed to be burned and received an explanation. To extract the metal, the insides had to be burned first. According to the dwarf's calculations, up to 500 kilograms of metal could be obtained from such a body. Sumizu was surprised by the boy's magical power and assumed that he had defeated the lizard alone using at least B-level magic. He noted the speed and power of the attacks. Kaede explained that he preferred to fight with a sword, since he was acting alone. He added that he had a short staff that did not interfere in combat. The blacksmith admitted that he had never heard of such a style of fighting, and was surprised by the length of the staff. In his opinion, 20 centimeters was too short. He asked what material it was made of. The guy replied that he simply bought it in a store in Aina, and did not know its exact origin. Kaede wondered if the staff's material affected the speed of casting spells, and asked if it was possible to create a staff from the body of a metal lizard. Sumizu guessed that his current staff was probably made of an iron rod and copper skin, materials suitable for beginners. He added that if he had the money, he could create a staff that would allow him to cast spells much faster. The blacksmith confirmed that it was possible to create a staff from lizard metal, but it would take time. He explained that the metal was very hard and required special processing. He also added that staffs and swords had different structures, so the approach to making them should be different. The warrior thanked the blacksmith for his help, and he advised him to contact Sumisa if he was really interested in making a staff. It turned out that she was the one who made the best quality staffs in the city. The guy thought about the fact that this girl was really capable of making a staff. Kaede approached the girl with a request to make a staff from the metal lizard material, specifying that he wanted a shortened version with a high speed of magic activation. Sumisu was surprised by his request, calling it too complicated, and asked if he even understood how staffs were made. Kaede asked Sumisu to teach him how to create staffs, citing her skill that her father had mentioned. The girl, surprised, agreed, deciding to explain everything. Sumisa began her explanation with the basics, explaining that the length of the staff affects the speed of magic. She emphasized that longer staffs allow spells to be cast faster. The girl showed a diagram of the staff, divided into parts: the core, the accelerating layer, and the outer shell. The higher the quality of the core, the faster the magic passes, and the density of the magic depends on the outer part. She explained that the magic density determines how much magic can be stored in the staff. If the density is exceeded, the magic begins to leak out. Improved materials increase the efficiency. Kaede proposed to create a short staff that would be as fast as a long one and could also be used as a sword. Sumisa, stunned by his idea, did not immediately understand his intention. He specified that he planned to use the metal lizard material for the shell and build a charging mechanism into the accelerating part. In exchange for constant recharging, he would receive high magic speed. Sumisa explained that a short staff with the chosen design would require as much mana as 3 mages would normally have and would be able to cast 100 spells. Kaede thought about her words, noting that his mana reserves were 500 times higher than usual, and with the potion, 5,000 times higher. He confidently declared that he could use such a staff, and noted that this was the spirit of a true adventurer. The girl was amazed by his drive. Sumisa agreed to make the staff, adding that in his current configuration, Kaede was in danger of quickly running out of mana. He promised to increase his maximum to avoid this. After finishing all the weapons-related business, Kaede decided to wait for 3 days until the work was finished by doing missions in Herrera. He took a new order. The hero found himself on the battlefield, fighting with many wolves. He actively used the shield and demonstrated combat readiness. Kaede completed the mission to exterminate the red wolves, but noted that his magic speed was still insufficient. Despite this, he looked around the area with interest and enjoyed the scenery. The boy noticed that there were no trees in the area and wondered if this was related to the rare appearance of monsters near the city. Suddenly, his device detected a human presence, and he began to wonder who it could be. Analyzing the signals, he realized that 2 people were on duty at the entrance to one of the shelters. It became clear to him that in front of him was a bandit lair, although the place seemed too open. Kaede went to the guild to report the discovery. Branch Chief Herrera was surprised to hear about the secret base, and wondered how they could have arrived in the city so quickly. He confirmed that he saw 2 guards at the entrance and indicated that he noticed a large hole that looked like the main entrance to the shelter. Kaede came to the conclusion that they were facing not just a gang of criminals, but a well-organized group. According to him, the presence of guards at the entrance indicates the scale of the organization, or that they are led by someone trained. Kaede informed the guild leader about the discovery of the bandits' hideout, noting that he did not know their exact number, as he had decided to convey the information first. The leader promised a reward after confirming the veracity of the information, but the boy refused the reward. The guild leader asked to keep this a secret so as not to scare off possible allies of the bandits. He also said that a suppression squad would be formed, and Kaede, as the discoverer, would most likely be included in it. The next day, Kaede went to the city and asked Sumisa if the weapon was ready. The girl replied that the manufacturing date had not yet passed. He admitted that he had hoped to use the new weapon on the mission, but now he would have to make do with the old gear. He accepted the situation with a small smile. The boy noticed that the trees around the town had been cut down and asked if it was to protect against bandits. One of the locals explained that the trees were cut down to produce charcoal, which is needed to smelt metals. Sumisa explained that the mined coal was only suitable for heating, but not for high-quality smelting. The guy remembered that in his world, limestone and coke were used for this. He enthusiastically suggested using coke produced by burning coal as an alternative and shared this knowledge with Sumisa. Kaede explained to Sumisa the difference between burning coal normally and creating coke, noting that when air is restricted, the material does not turn to ash. He drew an analogy with charcoal, emphasizing that the fuel does not burn completely. Sumisa admitted that she doesn't understand fuel and is only focused on making staves. She suggested that Kaede approach the fuel shop with an idea if he had a suggestion. The girl remarked that if Kaede could prove the effectiveness of his coke fuel, it could be considered valuable and even make him rich. These words made him think. Kaede arrived at the fuel shop and asked if it belonged to Igni. After receiving confirmation, he explained that he came with an idea for a new fuel, on Sumisa's advice. Igni asked what exactly Kaede was proposing. The boy explained that the new fuel was made from coal and should have a higher heat output than charcoal. He also mentioned that it would help save the surrounding forest. Kaede admitted that the shopkeeper doubted his idea. He asked for help in creating a new fuel, knowing that he would first have to prove the effectiveness of the development. Kaede explained that he would pay all the expenses for the experiment, but if the technique was successful, he would charge a fee for its use. He noted that in this world, rights to new technologies are recognized, and therefore his proposal should be safe for the partner. The guy added that the method had not yet been fully developed and would not always be successful, but suggested trying. The seller agreed to the terms and expressed his willingness to cooperate. Kaede thanked him. He was happy about this event. The guy noted that his task was not to develop fuel, but adventures. A night had passed since the report about the bandits. A suppression team was assembled in the guild. Kaede greeted the other members. The blonde mage introduced himself as Magus and said that he would be leading the team to eliminate the enemy. He stated that he was a B-rank wind mage. The team gathered around the map and discussed the location of the enemy base, which was about 8 kilometers to the southwest. They estimated the enemy force at between 30 and 40. There were 7 people in the group, including Kaede. Even though the mission was ranked E, the enemy had the advantage in numbers, so the members agreed to proceed with caution. The leader asked everyone to state their name, rank, and specialization. 2 fighters, Zenshi and Valen, introduced themselves as D-rank and C-rank swordsmen, respectively. The rest of the group also introduced themselves. Hankus was an E-rank spearman, Ino was an E-rank swordsman, and Ukoku was a D-rank archer. It was Kaede's turn. The boy explained that he was an E-rank magic swordsman, meaning his job involved using both sword and magic. Kaede noticed that the other members were surprised by his ability to use magic on the move despite his rank. One of the group members asked him to demonstrate his abilities, apologizing for his lack of confidence. The guy admitted that he was not trying to attract attention, but as an adventurer he could not refuse to show his strength if asked. He understood that assessing combat skills was necessary for the safety of the team. Kaede walked over to the training dummy, deciding that hiding his strength might be more dangerous if it resulted in other participants getting hurt. When he started the demonstration, some of the group watched him with doubt. His movement seemed inexperienced to some, and he was offered to use a potion and fight as in a real fight. The guy refused help and expressed his willingness. He performed a series of rapid sword attacks, startling the onlookers. He thought that they would be satisfied with the display of his swordsmanship. After that, he moved on to magic, causing a strike with the spell Stone Spear that exploded with a roar upon impact. Kaede unleashed a powerful spell that left a scorched line behind and shocked the other participants. Kaede remembered that he was asked to use magic twice, but Magus quickly stopped him, reminding him. Kaede asked if the performance was up to expectations, but the long-haired magi clarified that he had shown enough. The same magician immediately moved on to questions about protection and endurance in magic. Kaede explained that he had become an adventurer less than a month ago, and that many things had happened since then. He added that he could cast magic continuously for 20 minutes without running out of mana, and that he could also heal minor wounds instantly. The leader of the squad acknowledged Kaede's strength and, with a hint of envy in his voice, asked him to lead the front line during the attack on the lair. He acknowledged that the help of such a mage would be indispensable. The young man admitted to feeling nervous, but agreed to take on the lead role. He firmly confirmed his readiness to act ahead of the others. The group reached the forest, behind which was the bandits' lair. After discussion, it was decided that Valen and Kaede would go in the vanguard, and Magus would cover the rear. Kaede nodded in agreement as Magus explained the plan. 4 members of the group would go around the back and block the rear entrance that they had discovered during their reconnaissance. Immediately after, Kaede attacked with the spell Stone Spear. Dealing a powerful blow, the defeated bandits lay motionless, and Kaede immediately moved on. One of the participants, amazed by his speed, shouted that he was too fast. The others only had time to follow his actions. As Kaede quickly advanced, the others were amazed at how he was able to run so nimbly through the cave. He himself used the radar map to find his way, and was about to use evaluation to determine which of the people he met were bandits. Suddenly, Kaede activated the spell Pressure Magic, covering the opponents with a wave of magic. The bandits were confused, realizing that they were facing a strong opponent, and heard the order, "Suppress them!" The group reached a new part of the cave, breathing heavily from their rapid progress. Kaede noted that it was good that the path did not split, otherwise it would have been more difficult to reach this point. However, he knew that it would be more difficult from here. Ahead of them, a large stone door without a handle blocked their way. Kaede assumed that it could only be opened from the inside after knocking. That was how the mechanism of this barrier was designed. Kaede heard echoing voices and deduced that there were many people behind the stone door. He also realized that the space behind the barrier was too large for his radar to detect. Magus asked if Kaede could use magic and offered to break down the door. After receiving the agreement, he began the countdown, preparing for the invasion. When the door was opened, Kaede immediately rushed to attack. The bandits began to scream in panic, not understanding who was in front of them. Using his recognition skill, Kaede confirmed that everyone inside was a bandit, and immediately attacked with the spell Stone Spear, unleashing a barrage of magic on the enemies. Magical wolves appeared in the cave, but Kaede and his allies had already destroyed everything. He watched calmly as it happened. After completing the mission, the entire group gathered at the entrance to the cave. Magus admitted that Kaede was too strong, and this was the reason for the unusually quick and easy victory. Kaede noticed a strange signal on the radar and was about to start collecting trophies. He decided that since the situation was resolved, everything was fine. Kaede's radar detected 7 people and 1 child approaching. They assumed they might be kidnappers. Magus ordered them to be captured alive, and Kaede to focus on rescuing the child. A group of strangers appeared with a girl. One of them called out loudly, announcing that they had arrived. Kaede's team reacted and prepared for action. The squad immediately attacked the enemies. During the skirmish, Kaede used pressure magic, and the archer girl managed to protect the hostage. Kaede picked up the girl and noticed that she was very light. He wondered if she was under forced hypnosis. Using the skill Appraisal, Kaede learned that the girl's name was Rhea. She had no physical disabilities, but her race was special, not an ordinary elf. Kaede was surprised to notice that Rhea's status was very different from usual. It didn't indicate the amount of mana at all. The skill column listed External Magic Power and Magic Control 17, which was much higher than his own stats. He wondered what this skill meant, and assumed that Rhea could use someone else's magic power as her own if they had weak control. While he was thinking, the girl woke up and asked who he was, noting that she could feel a strong magical energy coming from him. Kaede was amazed by Rhea's abilities, realizing that her skill allowed her to use other people's low-control magic power as if it were her own. He couldn't understand how such a unique girl could have been kidnapped in the first place. When Rhea woke up, he asked if she was okay and confirmed his name. The girl was surprised, feeling a powerful magical energy from him, and asked who he was, addressing him as an older brother. Having learned the name of the savior, Rhea happily confirmed that she had indeed been kidnapped. Kaede handed her over to her allies and asked how things were going. One of his comrades reported that the enemy had been neutralized and that casualties were minimal. When Kaede was about to cut the ropes, Ria said with a smile that she could untie them herself and even freed herself in a jump. The hero wondered if she could have gotten out without help. Ria cheerfully explained that she had no magical power at all, so she would not have been able to save herself on her own, despite her outward cheerfulness. Kaede was surprised and asked if the girl had magical power, since she was able to untie the ropes. Ria explained with a smile that Kaede had a lot of magical power, but weak control, so it was easy to use. The boy was confused, wondering if she really used his magic without him noticing. Kaede noted that his mana had not decreased, and the other mages admitted that they also did not understand anything from the girl's words. One of them said that the guild would determine the location of her abduction, but Ria did not want to leave with him. When asked why, she remained silent, embarrassed. The girl pouted and complained that Uncle's magic was difficult to use. Then she loudly declared that she wanted to be with Kaede. She was asked to stay with him since she had become so attached to him. Kaede reluctantly agreed, and Ria happily clung to him. The young man thought that the girl was surprisingly obedient. He still couldn't figure out how she had untied the ropes and why she remained so cheerful after being kidnapped. Kaede hoped that the matter would be finally concluded once they arrived at the guild. At the guild, the girl explained that, according to the rules, they were obliged to take care of the kidnapped children. However, before continuing, she clearly wanted to add something. All the girls from the guild looked a little worried. When Kaede was asked to temporarily look after the girl while the investigation was ongoing, Ria hugged him tightly and screamed that she did not want to part. The others, surprised, asked the boy if he really did not know her. The boy sheepishly confirmed that he did. Kaede watched as Ria happily jumped up and down, repeating how fluffy everything was. He wondered why it had turned out that way, but looking at the girl, he realized that she was just a child with no memories of the past. He decided that he shouldn't treat her badly. Later, he offered her to sleep on the bed, while he himself slept on the floor. While the girl slept, Kaede thought about how he wouldn't be able to hunt monsters or go on trips in the coming days, now that he had a child with him. He also thought that he wanted to check on the progress of his coke production and his weapon. Kaede woke up to find Ria lying next to him, staring straight at him. He wondered why she was there, since he was supposed to be sleeping separately. The girl, waking up, calmly replied that she had just opened her eyes. Kaede smiled tightly and said good morning, not hiding his confusion. Ria happily exclaimed that she woke up because she felt the movement of his magic power. The guy still couldn't figure out who this girl really was. Kaede went into the fuel shop and asked how the coke experiment was going. The owner, Igni, responded pleasantly, but froze when he saw the girl. He was surprised, thinking that Kaede was too young to be a father, and asked a direct question. Who is this girl? Kaede explained that the girl had been kidnapped by bandits and seemed to have lost her memory. He was currently looking after her while the guild checked her past. The shopkeeper sympathized and asked if this meant that Kaede had temporarily stopped adventuring. Ria enthusiastically declared that she could fight. She happily added that with Kaede, she became stronger even than the Green Uncle. Kaede wondered if Ria was calling Magus Green Uncle, since he wore green clothes. The man confirmed that he had indeed temporarily stopped his adventures. Kaede recalled that the last time Ria was assessed, she had no fighting skills despite her words. Kaede looked around the coking oven that Igni had brought him to with enthusiasm. He looked at the structure with admiration, not hiding his surprise and interest in its design. Kaede noticed smoke coming out of the stove with a worried look. The master explained that this was part of the experimental stage and that a gas leak was inevitable for now. Igni admitted that welding with Mithril was a difficult task. He explained that he used an abandoned furnace that he modified himself, and if the current configuration was successful, he intended to commission a blacksmith to create a full-fledged, stable version. Kaede was surprised to see that the stove was made of Mithril, a rare material that in some games is valued almost as much as orichalcum and adamantite. He tried to ask if they could handle it with the current budget, since he didn't even know the market value of Mithril. However, the craftsman was surprised to hear that Mithril could be found literally everywhere in these parts. The girl excitedly informed Kaede that the stone they had found was Mithril, and pointed out that it was also present in other places, including the wall. The boy tried to comprehend what was happening, since Mithril, in his opinion, should not be encountered so often. The boy used the appraisal skill to check the stone, and was surprised to find that it was indeed medium purity Mithril. The merchant explained that even less pure Mithril was still valuable, and added that about a third of all stones on Earth contained Mithril ore. Kaede admitted with an awkward smile that Mithril seemed to be cheap in this world. His interlocutor noted that his ideas were clearly one-sided, despite the fact that he knew how to make coke. The warrior noted that it was good that they had enough funds, but the gas leak still needed to be fixed. Rhea looked in surprise at the stove, from which smoke continued to come out. She enthusiastically declared that she would handle the leakage problem and rushed towards the stove. Kaede was frightened and quickly grabbed her to stop her. He reminded her that it was dangerous to go near the stove and suggested that they stay away. Rhea pouted but agreed to act from a safe distance. The girl stretched her arms forward with concentration and began to use magic. A stream of energy rushed towards the furnace, sealing the holes from which the gas was escaping. Igni watched this with surprise, not believing his eyes. The boy held the girl in his arms, stunned by her abilities. Kaede watched in amazement as Rhea happily announced that she had managed to stop the gas leak. The man in the apron and Kaede himself looked in shock at the stove, which indeed no longer leaked gas. The boy was confused, trying to understand whether Rhea used magic, because at her level she should not have such power. The girl cheerfully explained that she simply melted the mithril with magic and closed the crack with it. Kaede tried to understand how she saw mithril, and when she answered in the affirmative, he decided that he would have to teach her some common sense. He bent a piece of mithril to explain that it was not a normal metal. The man with the beard noted that bending mithril with force like this was rare, and welding it from a distance was even more unusual. Rhea clapped enthusiastically, happy with Kaede's reaction. A man in a white suit approached them and introduced himself as Mias, an accountant. He greeted Kaede and noted that he had heard of him. Mias got straight to the point, stating that if coke were to be mass-produced, they would need to discuss technical compensation. Kaede agreed and expressed willingness to listen to proposals. Kaede was surprised to see that the discussion of coke production had progressed this far, despite it not being stabilized yet. The merchant confirmed that it was good news, because coke was proving to be such an efficient fuel. The man enthusiastically explained that coke increases the efficiency of smelting microfrill by 20 to 30 times compared to charcoal. He expects to quickly recoup the cost of one furnace in 10 days and wants to start mass production as soon as possible. Kaede admitted that he was new to such matters, and that this was his first time receiving a technical fee. He had hoped for at least 10% of the profit, but the merchant offered him 50%, which seemed very generous to him. Surprised by such a high share, Kaede initially thought it was a scam, but then decided it was a fair offer. He admitted his mistake and agreed, although he still thought 50% was too much. After the deal was made, Kaede learned that profits could be made in other cities, although he would have to pay a commission. He felt that things were moving too fast, and left him slightly uneasy. Rhea asked where they were going next. Kaede thought about it, suddenly having nothing to do. He asked if she had any wishes, and decided not to bother the blacksmith until he finished cleaning the magic from the weapon. The girl happily declared that she wanted to go on an adventure and fight monsters. The guy thought that she had a fighting spirit, but noted that it could be dangerous. He advised her to wait until she could protect herself with magic. The girl showed the ornament in her hair and said that it was her talisman, and that with Kaede she would be safe. The boy was surprised to learn that it was a magical protective amulet. It could neutralize any attack and was invisible to people with bad intentions. He wondered why she had such a powerful artifact. The girl asked if she could fight now, and he simply asked her to stay close, realizing that this explained her carefree attitude. A few minutes after leaving the guild, they found themselves in the forest. Rhea quickly found the right plant, and the guy noted that he chose the safest quest. Kaede decided to use the analysis skill to distinguish the right herb. First, he activated recognition to make sure he found the right plant. The boy used his analysis ability to distinguish the real Fiaro grass from similar species. One of the samples turned out to be fake. It was Breva grass. Rhea came up and asked if he had found anything, but Kaede said he was wrong. The girl showed another grass sample and happily asked if it was suitable. The boy confirmed that it was Fiaro and praised her. The companion happily said that she had won, but Kaede declared that he would then win by quantity. They continued collecting plants. Kaede activated the analysis and began to quickly find suitable areas. He continued to collect grass using his abilities, and steadily added to the number of samples he found. When he announced the 7th, the girl accused him of being dishonest. Kaede denied it with a smile and thought it was a bit unfair, but still considered it a victory. At that moment, he realized that his companion had already collected several herbs before him using magic. He suspected that she could also determine Fiaro's location like he could through analysis. However, the girl calmly replied that she could not. He was surprised and wondered how she could do it. It turned out that she was targeting the places where Kaede himself directed his magic power during the analysis. He realized that she was simply using his detection without having her own analysis. Suddenly, he noticed that she had become quiet and looked puzzled. Rhea activated her magic, and stone projectiles burst into flames around her. Kaede was surprised to see one of them, mistaking it for a stone needle. He asked worriedly what had happened since there were no monsters nearby. Rhea sharply objected and confidently stated that she could feel them. One of the stone projectiles fired by Rhea flew towards the trees and hit its target. A scream of a wounded creature was heard from the forest. Kaede was surprised to see the red wolves approaching. He realized that Rhea had sensed them from over 100 meters away. The girl explained that she was able to capture a special magical power from both monsters and Kaede himself. He was surprised that Rhea perceived him as a source of energy, just like the monsters. Rhea said that her magic was self-directed and therefore precise. When Kaede was surprised, she joked that he was too careless to handle such magic. Kaede cast a spell, sending a stream of magic towards the target, and Rhea then caught his magic to redirect it with high precision. Blades of stone shot forward, striking the enemy. The attack reached the wolf pack, destroying them with a lightning strike. Rhea happily stated that Kaede's magic was much more powerful and faster than her own. Kaede thanked her, and they continued forward. Rhea explained that it was impossible for a normal person to release magic in one go, but Kaede was an exception. He thought that if Rhea could only control one type of magic, then his abilities were truly extraordinary. Rhea warned that if she tried to control Kaede's unstable magic, it would go out of control. The boy wondered if his control was really that chaotic. Kaede reasoned that if Rhea was a mage with precise control, then he was more like a swordsman who created magic with force. He realized that her firepower was weaker, but he had a huge reserve of magical energy. He decided that he would cast powerful spells and let Rhea redirect them with precision. Until they found her hometown, he intended to enjoy this style of fighting, believing their combination to be invincible. Several wolves prowled around and then suddenly charged. Rhea watched in alarm as the pack of predators approached them. The girl said that many monsters were heading towards them. Kaede turned around with a slight smile, but Rhea looked at him seriously, reminding him of magic. Kaede admitted that he felt a surge of excitement, and Rhea happily picked up on his mood. Both were excited about the upcoming fight. Rhea explained that she only used the magic power that Kaede had unconsciously emitted. He was surprised that his mana level had not changed. The boy was shocked to hear that she had used all her excess power. Rhea added that she could not control the source of magic, only the flow, and could not fully use its power. Kaede thought about her words and admitted that he never really understood how his magic worked. He realized that he used it unconsciously, without understanding the details. Kaede asked if he could achieve the same skill if he trained in magic control. Rhea replied that it was possible, but she did not feel he had any particular talent for it. She compared him to a person from a world without mana. The boy wondered why he could use magic without preparation, and suggested that perhaps he had a special magical gift. Rhea noted that even with a gift, one cannot cast spells without proper control. Rhea explained that Kaede activates magic with brute force, just like she did when she changed the shape of the Mithril. The boy realized that he used the same tactic of forcibly activating magic. Kaede reasoned that the sources of his water and earth magic were in the environment. He came to the conclusion that he could use magic to raise the temperature to cause spontaneous combustion, and that his magic worked through a combination of imagination and environmental conditions. Kaede thanked Rhea for the food she had prepared. He was surprised that the dish was salty, since they hadn't used any seasoning. The girl replied that she had simply taken salt from the ground. The title page of the new chapter appears, with a girl standing in front of a spinning sword. The title of the chapter is I Decided to Think About It. Kaede and Ria return to the guild with a mountain of trophies and ask for confirmation of the task's completion, offering to buy everything collected. The guild workers watch in surprise at the volume of loot. The guild member is shocked to learn that they have collected over 4,000 Fiaro herbs and defeated over 300 red wolves. Kaede explains that Ria was also present in the battle and is starting to get used to this kind of reaction. A girl from the guild approaches Kaede and says that she wants to talk about Ria. He is surprised, while Ria watches in silence. The heroes enter the room for a conversation. Kaede guesses that the conversation will be about Ria's return to her hometown, but assumes that the girl is having a hard time starting since they got along well with Ria. Kaede decides to ask the important question himself, and asks if Ria's parents will come to pick her up. The guild girl apologizes and sadly reports that Ria's parents could not be found. Hearing this, Kaede is surprised and asks again, and she confirms that there is no trace of her parents anywhere. The girl explained that based on the bandits' routes, none of the supposed cities were Ria's hometown. She added that the captured bandits admitted that they found the girl in the forest. Kaede suggested that her hometown could be much further away. The girl admits that in theory it is possible, but unlikely. The guild does not have a single record of a race that would have the same traits as Ria. Kaede asks Ria to be patient for a while, and then suggests that she might have been abandoned because of her appearance. However, the guild girl denies this version. The girl clarifies that she does not know the details, but she was assured that Ria was not abandoned. Kaede notes that Ria has many mysterious traits. He recalls that he reported all of Ria's attributes to the guild, including her hair ornament, abilities, and race, which is listed as a, quote, special type of elf. He wonders if Ria remembers anything despite her memory loss. Ria explained that she was in a forest, but she did not feel any magical energy around her. She added that it was far away, and probably not on this continent. Kaede thought about it, noticing that her answers were too confident and reserved for a normal girl, which only increased his feeling that Ria remained a mystery. The guild member admitted that finding a volunteer to take care of Ria would be difficult. As they pondered what to do next, Kaede began to wonder if the girl might be much older than she looked, perhaps even older than himself. Kaede asked if they could find someone to take custody of Ria. He was told that if no one agreed, she would have to be sent to an orphanage. The girl looked at her interlocutor with fear. Ria exclaimed that she did not want to go to the orphanage and rushed to Kaede, saying that she wanted to stay with him. The guild member carefully asked if he could take her under his wing, although she understood that it might be difficult for an adventurer. Kaede thought that normally it would be difficult, but he remembered that Ria had lost her memory. He noted that her calmness was due to the fact that she had found someone with similar abilities, and felt more confident around him. He began to doubt. Would he be able to take her with him on his travels? When faced with a strong opponent, if he had to use all his magic power, the girl, dependent on his magic, would not be able to defend herself. He realized that he couldn't put her in danger. Despite his sympathy, until he was sure of her safety, she would be a burden to him. He asked for some time to think about it. The guild member agreed and said that he could make a decision before moving to another city again. Ria looked at him silently at that moment. Kaede promised that he wouldn't leave Ria alone, and the girl agreed with relief and joy. He wanted to express at least that much before making a final decision. The next day, Kaede woke up to find Ria already full of enthusiasm. She suggested going to the guild and fighting stronger monsters, mentioning the names of dangerous creatures. The hero replied that he had other things to do, and they could leave later. He thought that Ria probably wanted to prove her worth so that he would keep her around, and he partially agreed with that. Sumisa met them on the street, happily informing them that the staff was ready. Ria was surprised that Kaede was using the staff, and the guy clarified that he was a magical swordsman after all. The girl was surprised to see Ria next to him and asked who she was. Kaede excitedly showed off the sword-shaped staff and named it Sorcerer's Blade. He was impressed by the weapon's ability to combine the properties of both a staff and a sword. Ria was surprised to see that the staff actually had the same magical power. Sumisa explained that she made it like that at Kaede's request, and although the shape is strange, it is one of her best works. Kaede noted that the staff's weight suited him perfectly and agreed to try using magic. Sumisa suggested heading to the training grounds, and the group headed there. Kaede concentrated, holding the staff, from which streams of mana began to flow. Sumisa was surprised to notice the strength of the magic, and Kaede noted that this staff was different from the previous one. It literally sucks out magical energy. He decided to stop at 200 megapixels. After casting the spell Stone Spear, Kaede released a stone spear that exploded with great force, tearing apart the ground. Sumisa and Ria watched in amazement. Sumisa cried out in surprise at the speed of the projectile. Kaede, shocked by the result, realized that the staff could only be so effective due to the change in material, and thought that he could hit the target even from a kilometer away. After the demonstration, Sumisa asked how much magic he used. Kaede replied that considering the mana drain, he used about 100 megapixels, which is not enough to be of concern in everyday situations. Surprised, Sumisa compared the mana volume to the total magic power of 5 mages and questioned whether Kaede was really human. He laughed it off, calling himself an ordinary human with slightly increased mana reserves, and asked Ria not to disclose it. Kaede thanked Sumisu for the staff he had created, and noted that he was glad that she had made it. The girl smiled and said that if he was pleased, then she had no objections. Sumisa informed Kaede that the accountant from the fuel shop was looking for him. She conveyed that he wanted to talk to him after finishing his business there. Mias met Kaede and reported that the coke production equipment was ready. He added that about 10 machines had already been started up and the mass production process had begun. Mias explained that the coal miners had learned of their plans and had agreed to cooperate. He noted that there had been a shortage of workers before, and so he had turned to the Miners Association for help. Kaede was surprised by the scale of the Miners Association. Mias confirmed that it was thanks to them that they were able to set up production so quickly, and suggested that they go to the site together to see how the work was going. At the production site, dwarven workers were actively engaged in processing and transporting coal. Clouds of steam and smoke from the operating equipment rose above the area. Kaede, Ria, and Mias arrived at the coke production area where the dwarves were working. Ria was surprised by the large number of dwarves, and Kaede clarified that they were workers of the Miners Association. At that moment, an unknown man approached them, asking if he was Kaede. The man introduced himself as the chairman of the Miners Association, named Gainter. He said he had heard of Kaede and was clearly impressed. Kaede was surprised to learn that he was the head of the association. Gainter thanked Kaede for her help and added that Ria was making a good impression. He noted that he wanted to express his gratitude first and then discuss the important topic. Gainter explained that a strange illness had appeared in the mine, preventing workers from doing their jobs. He noted that Kaede, as a newcomer, might not be aware of the situation, and stressed that the illness was treatable but interfered with work. Gainter explained that the symptoms included headaches and nausea, resembling a mild form of magical overload from eating wyvern meat. Kaede suggested that the cause might be toxic gas coming from the mine. Kaede noted that he now knew the risks of eating wyvern meat. Ria listened attentively. Gainter added that, although there had been no deaths or serious consequences, the miners could not continue to work in such conditions. Kaede asked how the miners dealt with the disease. One of the workers explained that to relieve the symptoms, they had to stay away from the mine and work no more than 3 hours a day, resting the rest of the time. Because of this, business was going badly, and almost everyone was unemployed. Kaede thought about how the illness required almost a full day of rest. He suggested that if he used evaluation, he might be able to determine the source of the problem. Turning to Gainter, he suggested investigating the illness to help improve coke production. Gainter approved of his initiative and said that the guild had already posted a similar request, but no one had been able to achieve a result. He hoped that Kaede would be able to handle it. Ria asked if they were going to fight, but Kaede replied that the enemy this time was not monsters. Kaede asked Ria to stay, explaining that the situation could be dangerous due to the possible presence of toxic gas. He knew she might argue, but he couldn't put her at risk. Ria was upset that they weren't going to fight, but agreed to stay. Kaede asked Gainter about the area where a lot of the furry had accumulated. He replied that it was the first area they abandoned because a lot of people had died there. This area was the most dangerous. Kaede asked Ria if by fluffy she meant magical power. The girl explained that it was a little different, but the same feeling came from someone nearby. Kaede noticed that one of the miners' faces looked pale and used his appraisal ability to check his condition. He couldn't see what Ria was feeling, but he suspected something was wrong. Through analysis, he determined that the miner was experiencing an overload of magical energy. Ria confirmed that she felt magical energy, probably coming from the monsters. Kaede began to understand the situation. Gainter asked one of the workers, Garnier, how he was feeling, and he admitted that he was unwell because he had just returned from the mine. Gainter advised Garnier not to overexert himself. He then noted that Ria was very talented despite her age and compared her to Kaede. Gainter offered to take Ria with him on the investigation, arguing that the disease had less of an effect on children and that in case of danger they could simply retreat. Kaede decided that if Ria said everything would be okay, then he trusted her. He agreed to take her with him, and Ria screamed with delight. Kaede and Ria quickly headed towards the mine, with the girl hovering above the ground, flying next to him. The hero noted with surprise that she was flying with ease. While he continued to run, he thought that if there was danger, she could easily retreat if she had such magic. Soon they reached the entrance to the mine, near which there was a warning about miner's disease. Kaede asked Ria to report if she sensed the presence of monsters. The girl agreed and stepped forward cheerfully, ready to do her part of the task. Ria admitted that the walls made it harder for her to sense magical creatures, but she promised to try. Meanwhile, Kaede realized that his detection ability would be more effective in such conditions. He felt something strange underground and asked Ria if she had noticed the same thing. The girl came up and replied that she also felt the magical energy getting stronger. Ria agreed that the Fluffy was getting stronger underground and was surprised that Kaede noticed it. But the guy admitted to himself that he couldn't tell without radar and suggested digging up the place, and Ria happily agreed. Kaede started digging the ground, and soon the shovel hit something hard. Ria immediately noticed that this place was different from the rest of the rock. The boy was surprised, not understanding what he had hit. Looking at the place he had discovered, Kaede suggested that it might be an ancient building. Ria agreed, adding that the wall was most likely magical and even he wouldn't be able to destroy it. Kaede chuckled and asked Ria to step aside. His prodding only made him more interested in trying to use magic against the barrier. 10 minutes later, using all his strength, Kaede continued to attack the wall. Ria asked in amazement if he was even human, to which he calmly confirmed that he was. He noted to himself that this was the first time he had charged magic right in front of Ria. He then activated pressure magic and dealt a powerful blow, but the wall remained intact, which surprised him greatly. Just when he was beginning to realize how strong the barrier was, Ria screamed, warning him of the danger. At that moment, the floor began to collapse. Kaede and Ria found themselves in a dangerous situation when the floor collapsed beneath them and they began to fall. Ria screamed in fear, and Kaede tried to hold on to keep from falling with her. When it became clear that her magic couldn't support their combined weight, Kaede asked Ria to let him go so he could take care of his own landing. She let him go, despite her anxiety. As he fell, Kaede estimated the distance to the ground using radar, and decided to use recovery magic to survive the 15-meter fall. He had only a few seconds left before impact, and he activated his ability to gather rocks to protect himself from the falling debris. He concentrated to withstand the impact. After landing, Kaede was unharmed, though he was surprised at his own endurance. He stood up, and soon Ria ran up to him, concerned about his condition. Kaede asked Ria to light up the dark space underground. The girl happily cast a light spell, and the boy watched in amazement as she successfully illuminated the cavern surrounding them. Kaede looked around the huge underground room illuminated by magic, and was surprised by its size and emptiness. He noted that there was nothing in this place except high, smooth walls. Ria replied that she didn't know the details, but she felt a strong, fluffy, magical energy. Kaede guessed that they were inside an ancient building. Ria's confirmation, Kaede concluded that this was where the source of the magical energy was. He was delighted by the discovery and decided that they should return and report this. After assessing the height, Kaede asked if Ria could fly out of here, but she admitted that she couldn't fly that high. He wondered how they would get back out. Kaede began to speculate on how Ria's ability to fly worked, assuming that she was using magic and air pressure to create lift. He was surprised that her flight was limited in height. Trying to find a solution, Kaede asked if he could use the same magic to lift them together. Ria screamed in panic that he couldn't control the flight and might kill her on the way. Kaede suggested finding another way out of the mysterious room, and in order not to move blindly, he asked Ria in which direction the fluffy magical energy was felt stronger. The girl immediately confidently pointed the way, and they moved in the opposite direction. As they continued on their way, Kaede reminded them that their goal was just an investigation, and asked Ria to check for monsters nearby. The girl enthusiastically expressed her desire to fight, but quickly corrected herself when she realized that she had identified Kaede as a big monster, causing him some irritation. After a while, they found themselves back near the debris that had fallen from the ceiling. Kaede realized that they had simply walked around in a circle. He wondered if this space was in the shape of a ring. Thinking about the structure of the room, Kaede noted that there were only walls around. Ria agreed, but clarified that one of the walls felt a little strange and different from the others. Kaede and Ria approached a strange section of wall that appeared to be resistant to magic. He realized that it was a disguised door, made to look like a normal wall. Kaede noted that his radar could not detect what was behind this barrier, which made it especially suspicious. Kaede suggested that the door could be opened, as he had noticed old traces of its use. However, he warned Ria that there might be danger lurking behind it, and suggested that they be careful before going any further. Kaede and Ria watched as the massive door opened. The boy pressed his palm to his forehead, and Ria looked ahead in surprise, where strange creatures began to appear in the darkness. Mechanical monsters with sharp limbs flew out from the depths of the hall. Kaede immediately covered Ria with a shield and exclaimed that they were monsters. When one of the monsters suddenly fell, Kaede wondered if Ria had done something, but immediately decided to focus on the fight without being distracted by guesswork. He activated the spell with his magic sword and rushed forward to destroy the enemies and protect his companion. After the fight, Kaede approached Ria, making sure she was unharmed. The girl said that he was the one who stopped the needles, but Kaede himself looked puzzled. Ria explained that the monster's magic power weakened as it approached Kaede. She looked surprised by this fact. Kaede noted that the monsters were acting strangely and suggested that they resembled magical tools. Ria agreed, noting that their shape also looked strange. The girl muttered that Kaede was also strange, but he immediately asked if she had said anything. Using the appraisal skill, Kaede learned that the enemies were magical tools created for guarding. One of them was called Flying Eye, and the door that was resistant to magic was labeled Magic Isolation Door, Low Level. All such devices in this world were called artifacts. The heroes came to the conclusion that the building was indeed an ancient ruin. Kaede noted that they were currently here illegally, and also reported that his radar could not detect what was behind the door. The boy wondered what kind of monsters might be hiding behind the barrier. He asked if they should turn back, but Ria enthusiastically refused, emphasizing that they would not be able to return home if they retreated.
The boys went around all the rooms, and given their number, they managed to check 8 new doors. Behind each of these doors were empty rooms where complete hopelessness reigned. Hovering inside guards, but there was not a single path leading to the source of magical energy or the exit from this tangled labyrinth. Kaede thought about it, that this place was abandoned. And now they decided to move on. As they continued on their way, their attention was drawn to a rare door on which a sign was posted, warning that unauthorized persons would be disqualified. It was a warning, and the boy understood that there were even more dangers waiting for them behind this door. He decided to drink a potion of courage, while Ria thought it made no difference what kind of monsters await them, because they all will die anyway. However, the young man understood that their goal was not to fight the monsters, but to find a way out of this ominous place, but it seemed that they would not get out without the help of magic. Kaede asked the girl to be careful, and she agreed. As soon as they entered, there was a blow under them, but the guy managed to dodge. It was unexpected, and the guy assumed that it was another guard. He not only managed to protect himself, but also the girl. The young man was perplexed. How could he hit him? Because he saw the needles falling as they flew. Rio realized that there were other enemies among them, and the young man watched in fear, not understanding what's happening. He saw many monsters that were no longer hiding from him. They were guards, but of a different color, and among them were mechanical wolves and porers. Moreover, among them there was a huge flying snake, the size of which inspired fear. The girl felt disdain from her, although Kaede understood that this is not the main problem. The sharp spikes were already waiting, and they started to attack. The guy shouted for Ria to run away, and he obediently rushed into flight, dodging attacks. The girl reported that she needs a stone spear and he understood her. She stopped and used it to attack the enemies. However, when the fog cleared, she saw that nothing had happened to them, and the enemies were alive and well. The girl was very surprised, and Kaede did not understand why his magic didn't work on them. The enemies did not lag behind, and one of the mechanical wolves began to pursue him, and the girl warned him about it. The young man was not sure that these were really robots. Since they moved too quickly and silently, he decided to try using the magic sword. Kaede struck his metal body, releasing magic. But the wolf turned out to be very strong. However, the guy was not an easy opponent either and steadfastly stood firm, continuing to hold his attack. With all his might, he cut the body of the mechanical wolf. Now it became clear that his sword could still cut these monsters, but magic was indifferent to them and it was not known what metal they were made of. Kaede thought about it. What? Perhaps there is some catch, and decided to conduct an assessment. He noticed that he had a Category 2 infantry anti-magic steel crystallized with magic particles, which are not susceptible to any magical influence. Based on all these factors, it could be understood that they have complete resistance to magic, and the resistance would probably work on all magical tools in this room. Rhea realized that more stone spears are needed to destroy the multicolored guardians, pelting them with a hail of shells, and suggested this idea to him. He liked the plan very much. Now he could focus on the wolves. But the biggest problem was still the huge snake that was preventing them from dealing with the smaller monsters. She crushed everything in her path with her tail, but the guys managed to dodge. The guy didn't understand why is the snake so strong, and besides did not pay attention to the metal tools that were supposed to be guard and destroy everything around. The girl called out to the boy, telling him that the snake was preparing something strong to attack, while all his attention was focused on the terrible monster, from whose mouth a huge sphere began to form, ready for a devastating blow. Kaede realized with horror that the situation was becoming critical. He ordered Rhea to retreat and head for the stairs. She obediently followed his instructions. They were only a few steps away from the door that could save them from the imminent attack. But to their regret, right in front of them was a broken door leading to the stairs, destroyed by that same monster. The other monsters, like loyal servants, slowly approached them, preparing to attack. The guy understood that the situation was becoming hopeless, and the only way out was to fight. However, to defeat the snake, he had to come up with something brilliant, but he knew that his sword would never reach it. Kaede asked the girl if her magic could help knock the snake off its feet, but Rhea replied that it was impossible because the snake was too strong. Suddenly, the girl's gaze fell on the wings of the monster and she told the boy about her guess. She suggested that if these wings were destroyed, the snake would descend to the ground, and it would be possible to use the fireball for this. The guy realized that this could be their chance and agreed to the plan, but to do this he needed to create a ball capable of hitting the target. The girl used her magic to create a huge sphere of fire, and said that this should be enough. Kaede concentrated and directed the created fireball towards the snake, but she was not so simple, and noticing the approaching fire, she quickly hid her wings. Seeing this, Rhea immediately realized that it was not so easy. There was a powerful explosion that could have destroyed everything in its path, but when the fire dispersed, they saw that the snake remained unharmed. The guy, disappointed, realized that his efforts were enough, although nothing came of it. Suddenly a new idea came to his mind. He asked Rhea if she could control the fireball on her own, and she said it was impossible because it contained too much magical energy. This meant that Kaede had to handle the task alone, but without precise control, it was impossible to hit the hidden wings. He wondered how much energy would need to be added to ensure that the wings would be destroyed. Rhea concentrated and replied that it would require increasing the power 20 times. He wasted no time asking her to do this, while he distracted the monsters from getting close to her. The girl began to create a fireball again, and the boy, showing all his courage and determination, stood in her defense, realizing that their lives depended on their joint efforts. He still had the ability to accumulate the necessary magical power for the spell, but unfortunately, all the magical artifacts except the snake were destroyed. The floor beneath his feet was already beginning to cave in, but Kaede was still able to dodge her attacks, and if he kept up the good work, they might have made it. Rhea was supporting him as best she could, but deep down inside, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something might go wrong, when suddenly, there was a crash. Stones began to fall, and he looked at the ceiling in surprise. The girl did not understand what exactly scared him so much, and also looked up, seeing a huge crack that was spreading across the ceiling, ready to collapse at any moment. He realized that the snake was destroying the wall, which caused the ceiling to collapse, leaving everything without support. At that moment, the boy realized that he could end up buried alive. He asked the girl if she thought they could deal with the snake if they used 10 fireballs, and she replied that it would hardly work, but if they doubled them, then maybe. However, Kaede knew that there was not enough time. Meanwhile, the snake continued to attack them, destroying everything in its path. Despite all this, he managed to somehow protect both himself and her. He asked how Ria was feeling. The girl answered that she was fine, but something else was bothering her. Suddenly, they heard the ceiling crack, which a moment later collapsed on them, and huge stones flew towards them. She panicked and asked what they should do. Then Kaede explained that they shouldn't stay where they were and that they should run. He then motioned for her to grab onto him and grabbed her with one arm and held her close, preparing to run. Since the situation was like this, they couldn't miss their chance and immediately rushed to the opposite end of the room, trying to find another way. The snake, without losing its vigilance, noticed how the guys started to run away. At that moment, while they were rushing, he realized with horror that he had not found a single intersection and that an absolutely straight corridor stretched out before him. He prayed with despair in his eyes that there was a ladder below. However, when they finally reached it, they came across a dead end and realized that they were in a hopeless situation while danger was creeping up on them, ready to strike. The snake was about to attack again, and Kaede knew that this was a sign of trouble. The ceiling was no longer collapsing, but if the enemy continued to attack, they could be buried alive. He forced himself to hurry, knowing that he had to find a way to buy time to prepare the spell. Thoughts about going back to the stairs through the destroyed door started to flash through his head. He also thought about moving all the stones to his inventory, but he also understood that he would have to dodge the snake's attacks, and this was extremely risky, and in that case their fate would be decided. The young man took a defensive stance, overcome with anxiety, and knew that he needed to come up with a plan quickly, because not only his life was at stake, but also the life of Ria, who was standing behind him, holding back tears. Suddenly she asked him to give her the fireball, and he didn't immediately understand what she was planning. Kaede asked if she had a plan because she had said earlier that she wouldn't be able to control this magic. Ria replied that even in that case she was ready to try. He realized that it seemed that she didn't have a clear plan either. But having no other choice, he agreed and handed her the ball. The girl tried her best to control it, although it was difficult for her, and traces of tension appeared on her face. She used her magical power to neutralize any possible attacks that could come at them, and the hairpin began to absorb everything that came its way. As Kaede had suspected, the situation was too risky, and he needed to stop her immediately. He tried to convey his concerns to her, but she only said his name. The girl smiled, and replied that adventures were fun for her, although her smile seemed more like an attempt to ease the tense atmosphere than genuine amusement. He didn't understand why she suddenly showed such courage, although it seemed to him that it was a display of bravery. After all, she said it so that Kaede wouldn't bother her. However, he fully supported the girl and agreed with her decision. She screamed with all her might and directed her attack towards the snake. The ball was almost ready, and it was necessary to attack, as the enemy was already rapidly approaching. This attack actually had an effect, and the snake fell to the ground. Without wasting time, the young man rushed towards it while it was weak and jumped to strike. He did his best even though it was difficult, because it was a chance that Ria gave him. Kaede forcibly pulled his sword out of its sheath and unleashed all his might on the monster, not intending to miss this opportunity. Having cut the body of the monster, he understood that everything was coming to an end, and the damaged monster lay on the ground. Although it was very difficult, he looked exhausted and tired. Remembering the girl, he turned to her and she ran up and asked if he had managed to cope. The young man answered that he seemed to have succeeded and asked how she was feeling. Kaede wanted to know if she still felt careless, and the girl admitted that she couldn't really tell since the room was still full of chaos. However, she hoped that everything would calm down in a week and was glad that they had managed. It was time for them to leave this place. There was no way out, but if they cleared the rubble, they might be able to get out through the remains of the ceiling. They were so exhausted that they fell to the ground, deciding that they needed to rest a little first. At that moment, his attention was drawn to the hairpin the girl was wearing in her hair. He asked if she really put them both in danger, hoping that the magic wouldn't get out of control, and Ryu replied that the magic did get out of control, but her hairpin was able to stop it. Kaede thought that was extremely reckless. However, she was glad that everything ended well, and she was interested in what would happen next time. The guy thought that they would have to pray that there would be no new adventures, because if each of them was like that, his days would be numbered. The girl smiled and agreed with him and asked if he would take her with him next time. This incident showed that the girl is able to stand up for herself and, if necessary, use her magic hairpin for protection. It wasn't going to stop anyone from enjoying their adventures, even if it was a little girl. Besides, Kaede thought that being in the company of someone like him was much more interesting than being alone, and he told her that it would be much more exciting that way. Extending his hand to her with a smile, he said that from now on they would travel as friends. The girl, hearing this, was filled with joy and rushed to him to hug him tightly. When the guys returned, Kaede told them about the magical artifacts he discovered in the dungeons while researching the miners' disease. The girls listened to him, with their mouths open, amazed, not understanding how this was possible. The guy explained that it was called a magic eye, and its name indicated that it was equal to an E-rank monster. The second artifact was called a blue magic eye, which belonged to the rank D. The girl asked if the blue metal wolf he defeated and brought to rank B was equal. She also wondered if it was really him who defeated them, and Kaede answered affirmatively and said that he had another monster that he showed to the girls. They looked at him with horror and bewilderment. This was the same winged snake, and the girls did not understand what kind of wings these were, although the guy himself had no idea what it could be. All of these artifacts were related to the fact that they won, and probably the biggest one became the main cause of the disease that would eventually disappear from the mines. When the girls heard this, they asked with some fear whether Ria-chan had participated, and added that the guys had completed the task in half a day, which other adventurers had not been able to do, and they were sincerely grateful for the work done. As for the large artifact, the girl had not seen anything like it for a long time, and when she explored the ruins at night, she remembered every artifact, and if she doesn't know anything about it, then the guild knows even less. Kaede was surprised that the guild could not provide any information about the artifact. However, with his skills, he thought he could better evaluate it and conducted an evaluation. It was Snake Number 1, the prototype of the medium annihilation cannon. Before returning, the young man checked the ruins twice and found out that the place was abandoned because the snake got out of control. If they find out that the guy knows about the snake, he might have problems, and he should keep quiet about it. The girl, watching the artifact, realized that it was really huge and asked if it was the strongest. Kaede confirmed this by saying that the snake killed metal wolves left and right with its tail. The guy himself destroyed about 30 of them, but the monster probably destroyed many more than he did. The girl was amazed that he was able to deal with so many strong metal wolves, and if the boy really fought with so many opponents, it meant that he was equal to an A-rank adventurer. She assumed that the artifact was also A-rank, and Kaede was impressed upon hearing this and did not know what to say. The discussion continued, and it seemed that they were going to classify him as a B-rank adventurer. Apparently, to become such an adventurer, he needed to have leadership skills, and B-rank was currently the highest rank he could obtain. Kaede felt like he had done something significant in his life and in the world at large. They approached Gainther and greeted him, telling him that they wanted to talk, and that the conversation was about miner's disease. It turned out that they had already solved this problem 3 days ago. Hearing this, he turned around in surprise and asked how they were able to complete the investigation and resolve the issue so quickly. After the young man presented his report, the discussion turned to the topic of coke. The main topic was how to prevent technology leakage and expand production. It seemed that the kingdom of Basit he was in was going to start selling, and they had already paid the technical fees. Kaede felt that this revolutionary technology could greatly change the country. Suddenly, a sudden realization came to him, and he thought with horror that this was too ambitious. The boy assumed that he would join the negotiations with the kingdom and focus on developing the business in the capital, but he decided to hand over part of the profits and shift all responsibilities to the Coal Miners Association. Since Kaede was an adventurer, he still had not finished his journey. So the week flew by, and the negotiations with the Coal Miners Association went quite successfully. After the young man informed the guild that he was officially accepting Ria into the team, she was given a guild card, and he was also given achievements for being the fastest and youngest adventurer to achieve B rank. Compared to stories of national scale, this was still nothing special. Lost in his thoughts, the young man remembered something interesting and turned to the girl, hinting at a conversation about her hairpin. When they left the ruins, he noticed that the decoration was black as resin, but now it became colorful, and Ria explained that this was due to the magical power that he discharged and the hairpin recharged. The girl herself would have taken 30 years to charge, but this time she absorbed the energy in just 2 days. The young man was stunned, realizing that this fact indicated his nuclear source of mana. He became curious about what would happen if he directs a concentrated stream of his magical energy directly at the hairpin, assuming that the charging process will speed up. However, the girl warned him, having explained that such a thoughtless step will only lead to the breakage of the hairpin. At that moment, a girl approached them and apologized for the delay. She reported that the process of removing the magical power from the iron lizard has been successfully completed, and now, thanks to this achievement, they will be able to process metal in any corner of the world with the necessary equipment. The guy sincerely thanked the girl for the work done and turned to Ryu, asking if she needed additional armor, but the girl shook her head, replied that she did not feel the need for heavy protection. The girl asked curiously, are they going to go to another city? And Kaede replied that they had no specific plan. They would most likely just continue on their way, hoping that she will lead them to new adventures. Suddenly, the young man felt something alarming and instantly moved forward like a human shield, ready to protect the girls from impending danger. Ryu-chan watched what was happening with caution and apprehension, and Sumisa, with obvious bewilderment in her voice, asked about the reason for the caution. In response, the guy, with horror frozen in his eyes and sweat appearing on his cheek, he explained that something had disappeared. He approached Ryu with a question, trying to understand the nature of this phenomenon. It turned out that 100 kilometers away from them, the magical background disappeared. Kaede could not determine the source of such a colossal magical overload, but even he felt its echoes, and this is magic of incredible power. However, the guy could tell for sure that no one in this world was capable of creating a spell of such magnitude. The feeling was such as if an ancient artifact, like a flying snake, suddenly disconnected from its power source. Kaede was sure that the source of this anomaly was behind that very mountain. He turned to Sumisa of Vat with a question about the nearest settlements within a radius of 100 kilometers, and a girl told that there is a city called Orton, nestled at the foot of a dormant volcano. She asked, did he have any desire to go there, warning of the lurking dangers, because the path to the city lies through a labyrinth teeming with monsters brang. Hearing this, the young man declared with undisguised enthusiasm that they would definitely go there. The girl, experiencing mixed feelings of both anxiety and joyful anticipation, knew that the guy would do exactly that. He was a true adventurer, thirsty for adventure. As they walked, Kaede asked Ri if she was okay, and she answered in the affirmative. It seemed that she was not at all tired from the long walk, but rather overcome by boredom. Apparently, she did not experience any side effects or negative consequences from the constant use of gravity, and this was probably due to the fact that she used Kaede's discharged magic. First of all, her own flight speed was limited, but if he took his time, the girl would be able to fly at 70% of his own speed, and thus they will be able to reach Orton in literally 10 minutes. Suddenly, the girl noticed something ahead, and it turned out that monsters were blocking their path. She enthusiastically offered to deal with them, although Kaede was not eager to engage in battle, as he planned to get to the city as quickly as possible. But there was nothing to do, and crab monsters appeared on their way. There were quite a lot of them. The guy saw them and wanted to destroy them, and he looked quite happy. Now it was time for a warm-up, and Ryu heard this was incredibly happy, and they began to attack to clear the path from the monsters. Kaede asked her to attack but not kill them, and she agreed but curiously asked why. The guy was surprised that she had not noticed the obvious, and explained that the crabs looked very appetizing and it would be a waste to simply kill them all. Rhea was surprised that they could be edible, since she had never seen such monsters before and knew nothing about them. The young man thought about her words, because that they looked like crabs didn't really mean anything, that they are edible, and decided to take advantage of the assessment. He made an assessment, and according to her results, they were 4 clawed crabs with 1,200 units of health, 147 units of strength, and 59 units of agility, and they were also edible. Kaede was glad that he could taste them, and the girl, on the other hand, I noticed that there are monsters there too. The young man asked who this time. These were huge brown cockroaches, which, to my surprise, were also edible. However, seeing them, Kaede felt disgusted and scared. Now they had to quickly run away. Rhea, not understanding the reason, asked in surprise why they were running away, because the cockroaches looked quite weak, and the guy explained that these cockroaches simply spoiled his appetite. So they followed the plan and somehow got away from the cockroaches. The young man was holding a girl in his arms, who almost threw up from the strong shaking. Finally, they arrived in Orton, where a guy approached them, noting that traveling with a child on such dangerous roads, teeming with monsters, is quite unusual. He asked, "Are they okay?" and Ryu answered that monsters are weak. The stranger explained that these are D-rank monsters, and he doesn't think that they are so weak. Suddenly this guy noticed the sword in Kaede's hand, and noted that judging by his weapon the guy is quite strong. It turns out that not only master blacksmiths and adventurers can understand that his Witcher sword unusual weapon. The young man replied that they can easily deal with such monsters besides cockroaches, and became interested. What happened that so many monsters appeared near the city? The stranger told that this city is surrounded by 4 forests in which many monsters live. Recently, monsters began to escape from one forest and tried to move to the nearby forests. Kaede greatly, and he thought about it. If you think about it, then all the monsters they met were actually moving in the same direction. He asked, does the guy know the reason for their migration? And then the young man admitted that he knew little about the reasons for what was happening. However, according to rumors, the adventurers' guilds should have reliable information. The fact that they had not sent a high-level team to investigate led him to believe that the problem was not widespread. Kaede, yes against, believed that important information was being deliberately withheld from them. Remembering how the guilds hid information about bandit hideouts, he assumed that something similar might be happening in this case. Suddenly, during their conversation, the earth shook with tremors, and Rhea became frightened. She grabbed the guy and asked fearfully what's going on. Kaede reassured her by explaining that it was just an earthquake, a common occurrence near volcanoes. However, the young man smelled a strange odor, a distinct sulfuric aroma that planted a seed of doubt in his soul. The stranger told that earthquakes have been happening more and more often lately, but for local residents, this was nothing out of the ordinary. He asked them to consider this as one of the highlights of this city, and greeted them and opened the gates. Once inside, Kaede and Rhea looked around in amazement. Before them appeared a city of ancient ruins and hot springs, a picturesque combination of history and nature. Having checked into the hotel, the young man was annoyed to learn that the price per night here was 10 times higher than in Herrera. However, going inside, he assessed the furnishings and understood what he was paying for. The room had 3 rooms and even a kitchen. Boy. He asked Ryu if she could cook crabs using magic. He was eager to try it, and she happily agreed. While cooking, the earthquake started again, and Kaede asked the girl to move away from the pots just in case. He was glad that the girl was used to using levitation. Soon a sumptuous dinner was ready, and they sat down at the table. Ryu suggested that they begin eating immediately, was the first to try it, and for him. The taste was delicious, no different from a regular crab. Seeing his happy face, the girl also wanted to try a piece of meat. Her eyes instantly sparkled with delight. The dish was so delicious, and the guy asked if it was really so. However, he warned her not to eat it all, since they would need something to eat for breakfast and was going to hide the remains of dinner in the inventory. Ryo obediently agreed, and soon after a hearty dinner she began to feel sleepy. She fell asleep right at the table, and Kitty had no idea how old Rhea was. Since she looked like a normal child, he decided it was time to sleep. Now he needed to find out the reason for the sharp drop in the magical background that he felt when they were near Herrera. But first he needed to relax and get a good rest. Besides, the hotel had an open-air bath. Previously, due to fuel problems in the cities, where was the young man there was no opportunity to wash himself properly. He did it only with the help of a simple water ball, and now he needed to take advantage of the chance while Rhea was sleeping. Slightly immersed in water, he felt warmth spreading throughout his body. This moment was interrupted by the realization of a mistake, namely, looking around, Kaede did not find a bottle of shampoo. However, this did not come as a surprise to him, because the dirt on his clothes and body was washed off with plain water. This trait was possibly the result of the influence of a mysterious artifact. If someone were to destroy this object of incredible power, it would be a catastrophe. When the young man was about to leave the water, the earth was suddenly shaken by powerful tremors, and he assumed that it was an earthquake. All this was accompanied by Rhea's heartbreaking scream. The young man thought that something bad had happened, and he assumed that the girl had been frightened by the shaking, having forgotten about her ability to hover, although he remembered that during sleep this ability had left her. Behind the door he heard hurried steps, by which he unmistakably determined that Ryu was flying towards him. The door swung open, and a girl burst into him, all in tears. She was rushing straight at him, but the guy, realizing that he would appear before her without clothes, desperately screamed, begging her to stop. Rhea had already fallen asleep, and Kaede realized why it had become so quiet. He needed to head to the guild urgently, and it would be extremely undesirable for the girl to wake up. He prayed fervently that nature would not unleash another cataclysm. Soon he headed towards the Orton Adventurers Guild branch. The young man was eager to learn the details of the task from the girl. He tried to investigate the artifact, namely the disappearance of colossal magical energy. He experienced the same feeling while in Herrera, and the only thread connecting him with this case was the investigation of the reasons for the migration of monsters. Kaede didn't know how much the guild members knew about the artifact and decided not to mention its existence. He only told the worker that he intended to explore the forest and asked if the guild knew about the situation. The young man explained that he wanted to understand what information the guild knew so as not to return with information already known. The girl showed understanding and apologized, explaining that she knew nothing about the forest. Hearing this, he was extremely surprised, but glancing at her clothes, he noticed the intern's badge. Kaede thought about it, trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. It seemed to him that she wasn't trying to lie, but even if the rumors are true, they could well have been hiding information even from ordinary employees. The other employees he questioned also claimed that they knew nothing about this matter. The young man mentally apologized to the girl, realizing that he might have to put pressure on her. He once again emphasized that he intended to investigate the disappearance of a huge magical force. The guy was about to tell about his suspicions related to the artifact, but their conversation was suddenly interrupted by another girl who asked him to stop. She invited him to follow her. The girl had to find out how much he knew. The stranger asked how much he knew about the artifacts. As he thought, it was connected with the artifact, and it seemed to him that a high-ranking employee was in front of him, and Kaede began to doubt whether he should tell her everything. He told her that he once felt a strange sensation, and his friend, who understood magic, explained that it was caused by the sudden disappearance of enormous magical power. Then he came to the conclusion that such power could only come from the artifact. The girl breathed a sigh of relief that the information had not leaked, and asked her friend's name. The guy replied that her name was Rhea. Hearing the girl's name, she immediately asked if his name was Kaede, and the guy was surprised and answered affirmatively. He wondered if he should have mentioned Rhea, and why she knew their names. As the girl suspected, she was sure that they were the same rookie adventurers that had recently been mentioned in the report, noting their extraordinary strength. In addition, only a few adventurers could cover the distance from Herrera to Orton in a day. In reality, the boys needed only 3.5 hours, and for this reason they could be recognized. Despite this information about what happened spread with astonishing speed. In this world where there were no phones, Kaede assumed that the message was transmitted through magic. Anyway, this organization was a force with whom he did not want to enter into conflict, and the young man clarified whether information about the artifact was hidden. The girl reported that only select members of the guild knew about it, and they planned to make the discovery public, but someone strongly recommended postponing this decision. The young man was very surprised to learn that the information was being withheld on the orders of a third party. He concluded that the guild is a powerful organization, and if someone is able to forbid her something, then this likely feudal lord. The young man asked if it was always necessary to ask permission to disclose information, and she replied that this is not a rule, but in some situations not tolerating any particular haste have to act in a similar manner. He understood that this case is not an emergency. The girl confirmed his guess and said that the culprits had already been caught and punished. Kaede was amazed, having learned that the problem had already been solved, but he felt that it had not. She brought up the topic of conducting an independent investigation, after which the girl asked to mention her name and inform that he is there because of Lassia. He agreed, and the girl promised to help him if you need to find out any information. The guy couldn't ask her for anything anymore. Ultimately, Kaede was unable to find anything significant and decided to settle for this for now, as he was confident that third parties are deliberately hiding information. The girl reported that the criminals had turned off the artifact, but the monsters were still evacuating, and therefore it should not just be turned off, but destroyed. It seemed to him, having discovered his remains, he will be able to get more information. The girl asked with undisguised enthusiasm whether they would go fight monsters today, and the young man answered in the affirmative. He reminded that they are in the forest. Where did the disappearance of magical power occur? And today, they will not so much hunt monsters as look for traces of the artifact. The guy asked her to report if she senses a monster approaching or an unusual surge of magical energy, and Ryu readily agreed. Girl noted that it would be a little harder to sense magic with a faulty magical instrument. He laughed at her words because it would be extremely difficult for her to sense an artifact that had lost its magical power, and for an ordinary person it would be simply impossible. Kaede asked if she knew in which direction the destroyed artifact should be, and Ryu looked around and admitted that she had no idea. There were many powerful sources of magical energy located all around the perimeter. Hearing this, the young man decided that they will search the entire area. They immediately set about their plan, defending the surrounding area from the attacking monsters, fighting back and destroying them. He understood that they all needed to be looted, and suddenly heard strange sounds, and judging by them the girl was fighting off a whole horde of monsters. Kaede was frustrated that she was destroying them faster than he could pick up the carcasses to put them in storage. It was inefficient because he had to slow down. The guy decided that he could try to optimize the work with the help of magic and, for example, attract corpses with magical power. Suddenly he heard a noise, and everything around him began to be attracted to him. He no longer had time to do anything. The girl asked in surprise what he was doing, and Kaede explained, which reminds him of his carelessness and his magical control. He wondered if Ryu could use magic to drag the killed monsters to him so that he could collect them in his inventory much faster, but they were too heavy for the girl. Ryu knew that the guy can move quickly to collect them faster and asked, "Why doesn't he use speed magic?" Kaede was surprised hearing this because it was the first time I heard about something like this and decided that this is the same magic which she uses to move. Everything turned out to be simple, and it was only necessary to saturate her body with mana, thereby strengthening and accelerating herself, and decided to try. The only thing she asked for is not to accelerate towards it and take precautions. For safety, it would be worth trying a weak acceleration. The young man had already used speed magic and cast a magic acceleration spell, but he had barely moved from Ryu and stopped. He was surprised, thinking that he had used too little mana, and decided to try again. But this time, it sped up so much that it raised clouds of smoke, and even Ryu's hair flew up from the gust of wind. She watched him in shock, and he didn't understand either. What happened? The speed was so high that he couldn't stop and crashed into a tree, splitting its trunk in half. It seemed to him that it is rather inconvenient magic. The girl, worried about him, ran up to him and asked if he was okay, and Kaede replied that everything was okay and wondered why he was safe and sound. Ryu understood that it was because of his clothes, although he did not realize it. The guy remembered that his clothes had a feature to increase defense in exchange for mana, but he wondered if the defense power was comparable to the rank armor made of Gowardon leather. Kaede seemed to have an idea, and asked Ryu to tell him about the activation of this armor when it touched a tree, and she thought for a moment and exclaimed in surprise that this magic always worked. He was amazed that the armor constantly absorbed the mana he released, and the girl confirmed this and added that the armor grew with him. Hearing this, he was stunned. The defense was not at the level of the Gordon's armor, due to the fact that its wearer was an ordinary swordsman. It turns out that his clothes are monstrous armor whose power increases proportionally to his mana supply. Ryu was puzzled how he could not know about it, and he decided that even those who wore these clothes did not suspect the existence of this ability. Now everything fell into place, and Kaede asked her with lively interest if he could still master acceleration magic. Ryu suggested that he just continue to practice. He decided that now they would train together by killing monsters. This idea delighted the girl. The young man tried again and again to master the magic of acceleration, but each time he crashed into trees, losing control of his body. Despite the failures, he did not give up and continued training. He was on the verge of exhaustion, but he was determined to succeed. The girl, watching his persistence, was seriously scared, sensing something was wrong. Kaede asked where the nearest monster was, and, having received instructions from the girl, immediately rushed in that direction. He began to understand that if you constantly accelerate with the help of magic, you will inevitably crash into something without having time to orient yourself in space. So magic needs to be turned on and off instantly. The monster living nearby, sensing the approach of danger, became wary. Suddenly he saw the young man swiftly cutting through the air, rushing between the trees, and inexorably reducing the distance. The monster, seized with horror, froze in place. With one blow he threw the beast aside, and it lowered its head lifeless and froze motionless. The guy asked Ryu's opinion about how he mastered magic, and she explained that his movements were strange. He assured that everything was fine, and most importantly, he learned how to use it. Kaede decided to continue training, But Ria suddenly became interested in something. Suddenly they felt a powerful, strange, magical energy coming from somewhere nearby, and then driven by curiosity set out to find the source of this inexplicable force. They soon came across majestic magic circles etched into the ground. The place resembled the ancient ruins of Herrera. The object was impervious to any magic. The girl couldn't contain her delight when she saw the circles. Kaede thought about it, assumed that something significant is hidden underneath them, and praised the girl for her insight. The boys told Lasya everything, and she, in turn, asked about their discoveries. Ryu replied that it was all rather boring, and the young man asked her to be patient and let him explain everything properly. He told her about a mysterious entrance located 12 kilometers to the southwest of them. Sealed object resembling a lid. When they went down into the dungeon, ruins appeared before them, stricken by time and destruction. Traces of fire were visible everywhere, charred remains of former grandeur. Among the debris and rubbish, scrap metal predominated, representing no value. A young woman with undisguised curiosity asked, "Does this mean that there was something valuable stored there after all?" And Kaede answered in the affirmative, pointing to the artifact resembling a pedestal. It was a massive, round-shaped artifact, located in the very center of the room. The young man believed that it is he who is the cause of the strange phenomenon. There were fragments of a large magic stone lying nearby, and Kaede decided that it had previously been installed on a pedestal. When they examined the pedestal, they discovered that it is part of a subsystem of some complex device. They didn't know anything else about this device, but the guy came to the conclusion that this place served as an auxiliary facility for some larger system. Strange phenomenon apparently arose due to the destruction of a large magical stone. Upon learning of this, Lasya was shocked and then plunged into deep thought. Theoretically, even if the girl knew something about this place, the guy doubted it, that she would want to share this information with them, but it seemed she herself had no idea about this auxiliary object. After thinking a little, she said she wanted to ask about something, remembering the guy's words about that the underground ruins had previously been an auxiliary object, and reminded him of these words. Lasya suggested, "What about Kaede and Ryu know this, thanks to their ability to research?" At all, they both had these abilities, and she was right. The guy was surprised that she was able to draw such conclusions based on only a few phrases, and no one was supposed to know about his analytical skills. The girl added that she was not going to force them to reveal all the details to her. Lasya simply wanted to gain as much information as possible about the adventurers' contingency capabilities. Given their quick discovery of the miners' disease, she suggested that someone in their group has a high analytical skill and is hiding it. Rice, the observer of what was happening, was extremely surprised, and Kaede himself was a little worried that she might abuse this information, but still admitted that Lasya was quite witty. The young man decided that frankness and trust in the girl would be the right step. He decided to reveal to her the truth about his unique skills. Lasya listened to him with approval, and added that she would discuss the details of the route to the ruins with him later. He did not immediately understand what she meant. It turns out she had mentioned earlier that only select adventurers and guild members had information about current issues, but she thought these guys should be in the know too. Although she couldn't reveal all her cards to them without approval from the higher-ups, the girl asked them to be patient and not to place too much hope on her. Annie. Kaede, feeling a little nervous, thanked her, and realized that by telling her about himself, he had earned her trust. The problem was this hidden information, and he could only hope that the higher management would allow him to share this knowledge with him, and before that he would have to explore the place where the main system could be located, namely the Orton labyrinth. The next day, on his way to his business, he asked Ria if everything was okay and if she had hit her head during the night, but the girl replied that everything was fine and admitted that she secretly dreamed of a slightly higher bed, but it would be difficult to do so while sleeping. Kaede did not understand how difficult it was for the girl, since for him it was completely impossible. Suddenly, another earthquake occurred. The young man gently stroked the girl's head and asked if everything was okay with her, and she explained that everything was fine. Moreover, she had already gotten used to it a little. He was incredibly happy to hear this from her. The girl asked where they were going today, and Kaede said that they were heading to the guild to explore the labyrinth. Suddenly, a girl and a guy called out to them and asked curiously what happened. She said that she was one of the guild employees and asked them to go inside to talk. The girl said that the guys were nominated in response to a request from archaeologist Fione-san, and this request concerned cooperation, assistance, and help in the study of recently discovered ancient ruins. The young man did not understand what was being discussed and asked Ryu if she knew this person, but she answered negatively. It turned out that this award is contractual and they are free to accept it or refuse. The letter said that this person also wants to participate privately. Kaede curiously asked if the man was a representative of the guild, and the worker answered in the negative. He was surprised that a stranger would nominate him, and at such a time. The guy thought that this was Lassia-san's trick, and even if it wasn't so, he could go to the night ruins and there was nothing wrong with taking on this task. He thanked the girl and said that he would try to see her. They stood in front of a building that resembled a fancy tofu house, and Kaede shared this observation with Ryu, although she didn't understand. What is he talking about? They were about to go inside when the girl stopped him, pointing to the magical field. She noted that it was rather strange and he assumed that it could be a trap and asked if it was dangerous, but she replied what, more likely, no. Ryu suggested that it was somehow connected with the door, although I didn't fully understand what's going on. The young man decided that someone was using a magical tool as an alternative to the intercom and suggested being on the alert just in case. They walked carefully towards the door. They opened it and went inside. At that very moment, they were greeted by a friendly voice asking if Kaede-san or Ryu-chan was there. It was a girl, and she said that the guys looked exactly like they told her, and for her the composition of their party was quite strange. Kaede was extremely surprised that a fox beastman appeared before them. He asked the girl, "Is she Fione-san?" and she answered yes, smiling broadly. He certainly didn't expect this, and told, "What did you hear that she nominated him for a private investigation of the recently discovered ruins?" Young woman, she answered affirmatively, and added that it was completely unrelated to the guild and it was her private request. Although the ruins likely will be very different from what Kaede expects. She found these places herself, and it was not a lie. This deliberate manner of speaking aroused suspicions that it was all organized by Lassie, and the guild likely controls this information using methods similar to the guild card, and the girl uses a loophole to tell him this information. Kaede. I asked Fione if she could tell me more about these ruins, and she said that there are a lot of scary monsters there. It turns out the girl had previously tried to confront them alone, but all. What did she get? It's running back. Young man surprised that she, being an archaeologist, was trying to challenge herself. Fione just laughed at this and admitted that she was confident in her endurance after all. She also explained that there was no need to talk to her so formally, since she was not a big shot, and Kaede did not do anything object. She said about the ruins that will not be able to win them over with the help of artifacts. If only she could use Ryu's hairpin, maybe something would work, but as soon as she heard about it, she said right away that he wouldn't give it to her. Fione reassured her, having said that he won't be able to take her even if she wanted to. The powerful artifact could only be used by a specific person, and it was interesting as a research, although she probably wouldn't be able to analyze it because the artifact was too advanced. Kaede came to a realization that the hairpin is actually an artifact, and he wanted to know if there were any limitations to its use. Young man, I asked if each artifact had authentication, and Fione said that only the especially strong have this ability, and when it comes to a high-class artifact, they determine its owner from the moment they appear on light, and no one can use the artifact except the owner. Kaede was interested what rank is Ryu's hairpin, and the girl said that in order to find out about this, you need to study it in detail, but among all the magical instruments which she saw, her hairpin was the most perfect. Even Fione was amazed by the hairpin, and Ryu asked if she had a wonderful artifact. Then the girl agreed. Kaede understood, what does Ryu really wear such an amazing thing, and the mystery only began to deepen. Filled with curiosity, he approached the girl with a question about the reward she would consider worthy for his help. In response, she offered him to take all the artifacts without hindrance, hidden in the ruins, in exchange for his assistance for 3 days in exploring the ancient ruins. Hearing such a generous offer, the young man was quite surprised and became interested. Doesn't it seem to her that the terms of the deal were too favorable for him? But the girl did not hesitate to assure him that there was no problem with that. Her real interest was only in the process of exploring the ruins, and the artifacts, according to her, were of no particular value to her since she could hardly analyze them fully. Realizing that her passion lies not in the field of artifactology, but in archaeology, he was pleasantly surprised by her modest knowledge of artifacts. Fione admitted that her knowledge of the ruins was very superficial, and it would be extremely helpful to her if the boys shared their knowledge with her as they moved deeper into the unknown. Rie, without the slightest embarrassment, invited her to generously share any information she had. The girl explained that since she was not bound by confidentiality obligations to the guild, she could freely share her knowledge. The young man realized that this could be a loophole which Lassia cleverly used. Providing information without any restrictions is permissible if it is not part of an investigation, and if it is only information obtained during the exploration of the ruins, then this will not violate the prohibition of confidentiality. This way, Fiona can explore the ruins, and he in turn will receive valuable information about the artifacts. In general, it seemed like a pretty good deal, and Kaede understood that he will get much more benefit than his new acquaintance. At least he won't have to waste his efforts conquering the ruins. Intrigued by the prospect, he asked when they set out on their journey. The girl replied that they would go immediately when they will be ready. Such a quick decision was somewhat unexpected for the young man, although he did not object. I wanted to end it as soon as possible. Although, it would be possible to bargain for another 10 years, but this is an ominous phenomenon hanging over the world. Like a ticking bomb without a timer, forced him to act without delay, and he decided that it is better to go right now. Soon they found themselves in a cave, where Rhea was overcome with genuine joy. It was a cave with a natural hot spring and Filny was unusually hot. Kaede asked, "Does the girl feel anything strange?" And she answered that she feels many magical instruments inside, but not a single large one. It means that even if there is a pedestal with a magic stone inside, then more likely it is already destroyed, and it would also be reasonable to assume that there are magical instruments inside used as traps. The young man asked what is Fiona's plan of action, and she answered that I wanted to clarify whether he had the most powerful protection among them. Kaede answered a little hesitantly that more likely, that's right. Then she approached him and held out the magic instrument, and he began to examine it with surprise. She suggested that he go forward so that he could both follow behind while he set traps along the way. That was their whole strategy, but hearing this, the young man was extremely surprised. He understood that the girl wants him to become some kind of trap detector and realized that Fiona knew about his high defense. Besides, he suspected that this object could be something amazing and carried out its assessment. It turned out that this item cancels a fatal attack for the owner and could only be activated once within 72 hours, and it turns out that Fiona expected that the young man will receive fatal damage. He asked whether she had any techniques or artifacts that could disarm the traps, but she shook her head and said unfortunately there is nothing. Despite this, she had often heard of their remarkable achievements from the guild and was unwaveringly confident of their success. Rhea shared her optimism, although Kaede was not particularly enthusiastic about the plan. However, these two seemed not only compatible with each other, but even similar in some ways. The young man, as a mage with healing, could not allow them to go ahead. He had no choice but to accept her plan. As they moved forward, Rhea sensed something strange and reported that there was a magical trap on the left side, but it was not dangerous. Kaede was not particularly pleased with this news and asked in confusion what she meant by safe. He sighed with weariness and suggested simply going around the trap, but at that moment, his foot accidentally stepped on something. Ryu immediately understood what had happened and immediately called out to the guy, but it was too late and the trap was activated, and the arrow was released at the very moment when Kaede was looking at his feet, not understanding what was happening. The arrow actually reached him, but thanks to his clothes, it bounced off. The girls watched him in alarm while he looked at the arrow in surprise, not understanding where it came from. Kaede thought it was a misfire, and the girl explained that he had an irrationally high defense power. Ryu knew that it wasn't magic, so she couldn't detect it, and the boy told her not to worry, assuring her that everything was fine. Now he realized that there were magical and physical traps, and the latter didn't seem to have much power and were probably meant to make them lower their guard. He tried to determine the types of traps and made an assessment. When he did this, it turned out that there were a lot of them, and he decided that he could just delete them, realizing that he would activate them all. He asked Fiona if this was a good plan, and she agreed, although it was obvious from her that it was not. Kaede did so, and all the traps were activated. He asked Ryu about the location of the magic traps and their number, and the girl answered that one of them was next to him. He did not like this answer at all, since he could not see the trap no matter how hard he tried. If he can't see it, he can't use the analysis. Fiona explained that the magical traps were well hidden and she could usually spot several, but this time she couldn't find any. The girl praised Rhea, calling her adorable, and she giggled shyly. Kaede knew he would have to rely on her to detect magical traps, and asked what he should do to disarm a magical trap. They explained to him that he simply had to step on it. but he thought it was dangerous. Ria reassured him by explaining that he would be fine, and that some traps were blocking the way, and he would have to dodge them if he didn't want to step on them. The boy asked Fione's opinion on this, and asked what would be activated if he stepped on a magical trap. She explained that it depended on the specific trap. When she had visited this place before, the magical traps had summoned monsters, a downpour of freezing water, and other such phenomena. Many traps simply drained her stamina, which was why she had to retreat. Personally, she would never step on them, but Ria insisted that he do it. Kaede realized that the girl really wanted it, and that she knew much more about magic than he did. In the end, he agreed to step on them. The boy actually stepped on the trap with his foot and froze in anticipation, but nothing happened. He asked why, and Ryu explained that this was exactly why she had told him to do it. The magic power in the trap dissipated due to Kaede's power. Since the magic traps are well hidden, they only contain a small amount of magic power. He didn't understand what she was talking about, and thought that the power he released simply broke everything around him. It turned out that he had already had a similar situation, and although this is usually impossible, if we talk about Kaede, then this is the norm. On the way, they came across a door, and the girls froze in surprise. He wondered if they should look inside, as there could be many traps in the room, although perhaps not. Fiona explained that these ruins used to be some kind of facility, and she didn't think they would set traps for anyone. However, if there was a military facility inside, then it was possible. He agreed that if the object was relatively safe, there was no need to set traps inside, although the corridor was full of them. He decided to look inside anyway. The inside of the room looked pretty good, although the patterns on the walls seemed out of place to Fiona. She asked if he could see that the room was empty. The person who used the room had escaped, and that was why there was nothing there, and he could have set traps that could harm the object. For Kaede, this was already the worst thing, and he wanted to quit, but Fiona asked him not to say that. Since there were traps in the corridor, it meant that there might be treasure hidden somewhere, but even without them, the ruins themselves were already an important object of study. They could make valuable discoveries behind the secret doors in the depths. Of course, even if the ruins looked empty at first glance, they might have some kind of surprise hidden there, like in the Herrera ruins. Kaede reassured her by explaining that he was fulfilling her request. He asked if they were done in this room, and Fiona said yes. She was going to come back later to study the small details, and if there was enough food, he could make the ruins safe to some extent. Then he decided to go to the deepest part first. As they went deeper and deeper, the corridors became narrower and narrower, and the atmosphere around them underwent noticeable changes, and the ceiling was too high. Suddenly, Ria noticed something unusual, namely, a strange magic ahead. Kaede asked if this was different from the magical traps they had encountered before, and the girl said she didn't know, and added that the magic seemed weak and suggested that he step on it. Fiona suggested retreating to avoid danger, leaving the boy alone. This plan didn't suit him at all, but he had no other choice. Suddenly, the trap was activated, and Ryu informed everyone. This meant that it was not weak enough to be dispelled by his magic power. Kaede wondered what kind of magical trap it was that was activated. Suddenly there was a rumble, and the guy turned around not understanding what was happening. The girls realized that something huge was approaching behind them. It was a trap, a giant wheel, rolling between two walls right at them. The girls, overcome with fear, did not know what to do. The only way out was to run as fast as she could to avoid certain death under the wheel. Ryu felt that this was an intricate combination of physical and magical trap, so it seemed strange to her. Despite the danger, the young man was delighted by such a cleverly created trap. Kaede shouted for the girls to continue running without taking their eyes off the approaching threat. Using acceleration magic, he rushed down the corridor at breakneck speed, leaving behind only a whirlwind of dust. This maneuver should have activated all the traps ahead. Stopping, the guy thought about his next plan of action. The metal wheel was still racing at great speed after the girls, who were barely able to escape. Instead of running, he turned around and walked towards the approaching object, hatching a daring plan. He explained to the girls that he had a plan, and Ria, without losing her vigilance, asked if he knew that such an object was practically indestructible. Kaede explained that he was not going to destroy it, but would only stop it using magic to create a stone wall. The girls watched in amazement, not understanding how this was possible. However, their amazement turned to horror when the wheel crashed through the wall and continued to move inexorably in their direction. With fear in his voice, he ordered the girls to run forward. With horror in their eyes, barely holding back tears, they ran as fast as they could. The wheel kept up, picking up speed. He assumed that because of the slope, it was getting faster, and his magic would no longer be able to stop it. They managed to run some distance, and he asked Rhea if there was a crossroad ahead, and she replied that they were on the left side. Approaching the crossroads, they saw a room. He asked if there were any monsters inside, and Ryu assured him that there was no one there. Running inside, his gaze caught something that made him astonished. He saw a thing that was immune to magical power. Kaede assumed that it looked like a trap, but that didn't mean it was safer to keep running. It was a risky move, but the wheel kept coming closer. Once inside, they realized that they were trapped, and the guy asked the girls to stay put. He tried to destroy the wall with magic, but to no avail. The wall remained impregnable. Suddenly, Ryu felt something and shouted to Kaede about it. He asked in fear what was going on, and looking up, saw the roof of the hole fall from the ceiling with a crash. The young man watched in horror as a huge number of artifacts began to fall out from there. These were crushers of the Type 3, massive structures designed to destroy everything in their path. As soon as they landed, they immediately began to attack. The guys, confused, simply moved around the room trying to avoid collision with them. These bulky machines tried to crush them with their weight, but they were too slow. Kaede asked Rhea how many times he needed to strengthen his stone spear to defeat them, and she guessed 20 times. Hearing this, he was surprised and realized that they needed to buy some time. He left the girls and asked Rhea to protect Fiona, while he used acceleration magic to get closer to the monsters. The girl watched him with admiration. The magic sword was useless against metal, and he had an idea. Namely, he decided that he needed to aim at the crystals. He hit the crusher, and something happened to the artifact. Kaede gloatingly asked him to attack again, but they began to move randomly, trying to hit the guy. Even if the boy couldn't penetrate their metal armor, that didn't mean he couldn't take away their ability to move. Fiona was worried that she wouldn't be able to help them, but Kaede reassured her by explaining that his job was to protect her. Now they had to get out of this room. Using magic, he created a huge number of large stone spears and directed them towards the crushers. With one swing, he destroyed them all and cleared a path to the exit. Fiona was surprised by his absurd strength, and the young man explained to her that he was just a traveler. Suddenly, Ryu saw something and said that she had found a magic stone. The guy assumed that it was the source of energy for those machines and suggested breaking it. He assumed it was a room, and as they walked down the hallway, he suggested that he was destroyed by those machines, and Rhea supported his opinion. Suddenly, Kaede heard Fiona's voice. He looked at her and saw that she was sitting on her knees and crying. She was all in tears because the precious documents were destroyed to pieces. They set a trap that would destroy their own building. The girl did not understand what the creator of this trap was trying to achieve, and the boy had the same question. Suddenly, Rhea called him away and asked him to move something. When he followed her, it turned out that she wanted to move a metal roller. He asked if she really wanted it moved and why she wanted to do that, since there was nothing behind it. She suggested something underneath it, and he looked down in surprise. Kaede agreed and tried to remove it in 1, 2, 3. He succeeded, and the girl found something in surprise. It was a sword, and it was a cool find. Rhea decided that she would bring it to the guy, but when she took the handle, she thought about it. It turned out that it was very heavy, and when the young man asked to let him do it, he was also surprised. He could hold it, but it was heavy, and Fiona, amazed, asked how he was able to lift it. She explained that it was presumably because the sword was gravity-based. Kaede didn't understand what she was talking about, and assumed that there was some kind of effect hanging on him that gave him weight. He began to evaluate, and it really was a gravity sword. Super strong, and it could accelerate gravity when swinging down. The latter was completely incomprehensible to him, and he wondered if he could fight with this thing using force. Fiona assumed it was a very powerful sword if Kaede could handle it, but she had never heard of anyone being able to carry it because it was too heavy. Only a few travelers had been able to lift it, but they already had their own weapons, so they had no need for that sword. The young man asked her if this sword would be needed for research since it was an artifact, and she confirmed that it was an artifact, but it was not particularly rare, and offered him to take it if he wanted it. The guy agreed. Fiona decided that they had done enough exploring for the day, and it was time to head back. Kaede was surprised that it was so quick, but she just needed someone to activate the traps, and then she would do a full excavation of these ruins later. On the way back, they chatted, and Fiona told them how so much had happened today, and for the first time in a while, everything was going according to plan. She was having a lot of fun. Suddenly, the girl pressed something, and not only Rhea, but also Kaede realized it. The guys immediately froze in place. It was the crushers again. Fiona apologized for her mistake, but the young man assured her that everything was fine. He was already thinking about what to do. In such a narrow space he couldn't hit their crystals. Rhea asked why he didn't try that new sword. The weight of the sword didn't slow him down, and it was probably because of the enchantment on it. Kaede jumped towards them and swung his sword. The full power of the two-handed sword would be revealed when he swung it down. This sword has much more destructive power than the wizard's sword. With one blow, it cut the artifacts into pieces without much effort. Kae-san definitely liked this sword. Fionn thanked both boys for the work they had done, and since they had returned safe and sound, she suggested they talk about what they would do next. Rhea asked if they had completed the task, but he replied that they had not yet. Their goal was to find information about the destroyed artifacts. Kaede asked if she had found anything related to the earthquake, and she said that she had, but it was completely unrelated to this. The boy thought that this meant that they had investigated everything in vain, although this was not the case. Fiona asked if the boy knew Radamkosa. The guy answered negatively and asked if it was the person's name. The girl answered affirmatively, but soon added that the person was called Radamkos van Ortion. In this world, only nobles have surnames. Moreover, Fiona mentioned that his surname was Ortheon, which was the name of a city. The young man wondered if this man was the lord of the area, and whether it would be impolite to address him without due honors. However, she assured him that there was nothing wrong with it and everything was fine. The girl explained that in the city he was treated like a piece of shit and that he was not the ruler of this area, but only his successor. It seemed that everyone really hated this guy. Fiona said that about a month ago, after the current ruler Forso herself left for the capital, Radamkos became the deputy ruler and began to collect exorbitant taxes for no reason. Then he began to take valuables from stores and even kill innocent people on false charges. In general, he did as he pleased. Kaede asked in bewilderment if he was trash and a criminal, but she explained that duels are formalized by free will and it is not considered a crime. Even if they killed their opponent in a duel, it would not be considered a crime. That is the common sense of this world. The young man asked how this man and the earthquake were connected, and she told him that Radamkos had forbidden the guild to divulge the information. It was just her opinion, but she thought that he was the one who had stopped the investigation process of the earthquake and also embezzled the advance money. Because of this, many people, including herself, had a hard time. Kaede replied that he understood the situation, but he wanted to hear more from her. He asked the girl directly what she wanted them to do with this man. She exhaled and still told him that she wanted him to pay. In despair, she even admitted that she would be happy if the young man could kill him. He wondered if he would become a criminal if he killed him, but Fiona explained that Radamkos often bullied people and killed them in duels. This meant that Kaede could use his status as an E-rank adventurer. In this world, there is a belief that rank equals strength, and there are probably no other adventurers like him who would remain at rank E. A person who imposes high taxes makes people suffer, and a person who is involved in the destruction of artifacts could be eliminated in the opinion of the young man. The guy asked to give him time to think, and the girl had no choice but to agree. The request to kill the deputy lord was serious, and he didn't think that Fiona's words were a lie, but he wanted to at least make sure of it first before accepting the request. He thought that it would be better if he first collected information in the city and paid a visit directly to the person in question. Now that the young man thinks about it, he realizes that he doesn't even know his face. Suddenly, something started happening on the way, and the guy stopped to look. A stranger was calling the man a nasty old man, while holding a bag in his hands. He explained that he should be grateful to him for being able to give his taxes directly to Mr. Radamkos. Kaede realized that this was the same man that Fiona had mentioned. The guy approached the townspeople and asked what was going on there. The seller decided that he was a simple-minded traveler and advised them to stay away from there. The merchant explained that this was a typical trick of Radamkos. He looks for his victim and makes their life difficult by suddenly increasing taxes tenfold. If they cannot pay, he demands their things, and when there is nothing left, he takes away their shops. The man advised not to even think about stopping him because if he saw that someone dared to stop him, he would accuse them of slander and start a duel to the death. Many people were killed because they could not ignore his behavior. Kaede realized that he was truly trash. This meant that the rumors about his involvement in the destruction of the artifacts were likely to be true. The man sighed and said that he wanted Forzen herself to come back soon and that he was tired of this piece of shit. Suddenly, Radamkos called out to him, asking what he had said. He called him a worthless commoner who dared to call him a piece of shit and asked if he was ready to pay for such words. In the name of Radamkos, he challenged him to a duel, full of confidence in his victory. The man asked Kaede to stay away from him so that he wouldn't get dragged into it, too. Radomkos asked what he was raving about and was sure that no one wanted to die. He was going to show him mercy if he paid him attacks several times more than usual and forgot about it. The man tried to object. Kaede didn't like this situation very much, and Rhea covered her face. It turned out that she was covering her nose in this way because this man smelled very strongly. The man, already sweating, tried to explain that it was not right to say that, but everyone had already burst into laughter. Radomkos looked around and saw everyone laughing. Realizing what was happening, he got angry. The man called Rhea a little brat and explained that it was a noble scent. He menacingly asked how she dared to say that it stinks and decided to start teaching everyone a lesson with her. As soon as he started to approach her, Kaede tripped him, and he fell right to the ground. The boy wasn't very good at role-playing games, but that couldn't be helped either. Kaede agreed that it was a smelly perfume, but he thought the smell was coming from his body, and explained that the smelly one was like a piece of shit. Rhea was surprised by his manner of speech and the fact that his outfit was gone. Kaede explained that he took off his outfit to look weaker than Radomkos. He stood up from his knees and insulted him, and the young man assumed that the man wanted to fight him and asked what a spoiled, incompetent nobleman could do against him. Kaede asked if he could stand up to the strongest adventurer of the E rank. Radomkos didn't hear the rank at first, but when he did, he grinned. It was great news, and he figured Kaede and the rest of the idiots would learn what happened if they stood up to him.